I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item C, adjustments to the agenda.
I can do that.
Okay.
I was thinking of something else. Yes, for the board's consideration, I have one recommended adjustment, would be to amend the agenda by adding item J9 under new business, discussion and consideration of a proposal by the Down East Audubon to revive nature trails at EEMS.
I move that we adjust the agenda as recommended by the superintendent.
Seconded.
I heard it, I heard it, but I didn't see it.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Approval of minutes for September 11th, 2020 school board meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? How about you? Communication and correspondence.
I have 3 letters of resignation that I will take up under my report.
Thank you. Any other? Okay. Public participation. Any individual is welcome to discuss his or her views on any item on the agenda. All wishing to speak on an item must call Paul Marcosian at pmarcosian@ellsworthschools.org. Questions, comments posted on Facebook are not seen by us and therefore will not be answered. All individuals sending questions and comments must identify themselves. Members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools. The board will hear but not discuss or act on matters not already on the agenda. However, will receive comments for consideration. No complaints or allegations will be allowed at school board meetings concerning any person employed by the school system or against particular students. Personnel matters or complaints concerning student or staff issues will not be considered in a public meeting. Speakers are not permitted to share gossip, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. In order to make efficient use of meeting time, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments to the board. The board requests that groups or organizations be represented by a designated spokesperson. The chair has the authority to stop any presentation that violates these guidelines or the privacy rights of others.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
may I make a brief comment?
Yes.
I just want to note that tonight marks the end of an era in our school district. It's Brenda Thomas's last meeting as a school board member, I believe.
I may be coming to the workshop meeting at the end of the month.
But, yes,
Yes.
but aside from the workshop,
Meeting,
this is
yes.
your last meeting.
Yes, it is.
On the second Tuesday of the month. I feel very privileged to have served alongside you on this board from the time that we
Thank you.
became the Ellsworth School Department again in 2014. I'm one of the, there's hundreds of people in Ellsworth who know Brenda, and who had her as a second grade teacher, or their kids did, or they've just, she's had such a long and memorable career here in our Ellsworth, in our school district as a second grade teacher, and she served in other capacities as well. I got to know Brenda first in 2013 when there was an initiative underway to withdraw from the RSU that we belong to. And I think that's when we first met, going to meetings. Some of them took place in these very same council chambers. And in fact, found this, you remember this?
Oh, yes, I do.
But it says, vote yes, November 5th, take back our schools. You probably have one of these.
I do.
So then, subsequent to that successful referendum vote in November of 2013, we had a special election in February to vote for the new school board, and I was very honored to have been elected at that time. Brenda and I are the two remaining members from that initial group. And Brenda, all I can say is I'm going to miss you both personally and professionally. You've served with distinction, and I've come to admire your perspective on things, your integrity, your insight, your intelligence, your way of framing the discussion in ways that help everyone who's participating in it to get to a better understanding. And I look forward to when we emerge from COVID finally, that'll happen someday, and the Brookside Restaurant at Hctc is once again operational. And for those of you who haven't been to that, it's a really wonderful thing on Wednesdays during most of the school year. I look forward to seeing you and Jesse there, because I know you're regulars, and just thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. I've enjoyed my time on the board.
Mrs. Thomas, may I have a couple of moments?
Sure.
I certainly can't improve upon what Mr. Marcosian did, but, and I think I speak for many people in this community, just want to express deepest appreciation for the service you have given, not only to the school department in your years as a teacher, literacy teacher, classroom teacher, certification chair. I believe you were a negotiator for the Teachers Association at one point in time. Served with distinction in all those years. I believe you were on the RSU 24 school board in the last year or two when Ellsworth was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
We were one of the charter members of this school board when the community made a great decision and withdrew. As Paul said, I've known you for a long time. Also had your kids in school, which was a joy. Yeah, it was a joy, Brenda. I told you that then, and it's a truth. But just want to express the appreciation for all that you have done in all the various capacities for this school system, for the children of this community, and for this community. You will be missed on this board, and have truly enjoyed serving, from my capacity, with you. So thank you very much, and best wishes, although I'm sure you're still going to be around. No
Thank
question
you.
about it. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you. Administrative board reports. Mr. Clifford.
Good evening. So just a overview over the first 5 weeks of school, and we'll go a little bit more in depth as to what's going really well and some challenges that we're having. But the teachers are working extremely hard. The students are working extremely hard. The staff, the custodians have been terrific. I think 5 weeks ago, if you were to ask me how it was going to go, and I really didn't know. And 5 weeks later, I would say it's gone really, really well, and everybody's gone above and beyond, which I feel great about. The parents have been terrific, the students have been terrific, the remote kids, the hybrid kids, there's a lot of different parts in play, but I feel like we've done a good job of covering all of them, especially the teachers with communication home and things like that. So, so far so good. One thing that we're really lacking is just Rti time for our students, because we have a 1 through 7 period, 48 periods a day, and we always had a focused learning. But because of the gathering, we can't have focused learning right now. And so we're just trying to find time. Right now it's after school, but trying to find time during the day when students can meet with teachers, because they need that help. And We have some students that are struggling right now, but if we had that, I think they would be doing a lot better. And so we're looking at some different things to try to remedy that, as best we can. The other part that's been exciting is, just having clubs and sports back. It's been a long, long time. It was about 5.5 months since we had something like that. So, days that we have games home or, there are clubs happening after school. Some are remote and some are in person. There's this kind of a buzz in the air in the school, which hasn't happened for a long time. And so that tells me that normalcy is right around the corner, because it's a little normal right now. Attending games like some of you have, and so that part of it has been fun and exciting again, to say the least. But like I said, the teachers work extremely hard, and the students are, and custodial staff, and parents have been really patient and terrific, and I couldn't ask for a better start in the first 5 weeks. I really couldn't. Anyone have any questions on anything specific? Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gabonelli?
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Good evening. It's nice to see everybody. So I have some really great news to share with you folks in the entire Ellsworth community. You may have seen it on our Facebook page. But on Friday, we were able to recognize Mrs. Brenda Frost, the guidance counselor at EMS, as the recipient of the 2020 Martin Gallant Distinguished Counseling Professional. Counselors who are considered for this award are ethical, effective, and diligent advocates for clients and students. They're leaders, mentors, and positive examples of professionalism within the counseling community, and with consistent accomplishment throughout their careers. They exemplify integrity, patience, and compassion in their empowering work with students, clients, families, or colleagues. And Mrs. Frost certainly embodies all of those things. She really was not happy that we were recognizing her, because she's so humble, and that's really not something that she's comfortable with, even though she often recognizes the accomplishments of others around her. But we were thrilled to be able to do that. And she also got some recognition from the legislature, from Louis Lucchini, and from the Rotary, with a fellowship. I'm sorry, I forget the name of the fellowship, but it was really a nice ceremony for all of us. And we were so fortunate that in some ways she wasn't able to get recognized at the annual conference in March, because we were then able to celebrate with her in this beautiful way. So that was fantastic on Friday. I also, like Mr. Clifford, want to take a moment to express my gratitude to several people. Our IT staff, custodial staff, and maintenance staff. They have been working extremely hard, making things run smoothly on a daily basis, and I can't begin to express the amount of time and effort that they're putting into all of what they're doing on a daily basis. I'm extremely appreciative to all the extra work the teachers are putting into making sure the students get what they need. They're putting in several extra hours a week and working very, very diligently. And by all accounts, according to all the parents that I'm contacting recently and talking with, it's going very, very well. And we're excited about that. And I'm extremely grateful for the support of the administrators and the school board, because without your support, we couldn't be making this happen right now for our kids. It's so great to have them back in school. It's so great to be, like Mr. Clifford said, having athletics. It's really starting to engage our kids. We've got things up and running at the middle school. We're still working on a few more things, but thank you to all of the hard work and dedication. Again, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we are continuing to work very, very hard to make it the best we possibly can for our students. So thank you to all of those groups and people for helping us out. Cross country and soccer are off to a great start. It's lovely to see all of that. We had our first home cross country race last Thursday, and we've had a couple of home soccer games. So the kids are doing really well. They're remembering the guidelines, the spacing, the masks, and they're out there and competing, and it's really nice to see. And there is a little bit of a buzz at school too, and kids are excited and they're engaged. And it's helping with kids engaging on their remote days as well. The ticket system is going really well. We haven't had any issues. Can't imagine that we would have less than 100 people at a middle school soccer game, but we do. So it's going really well. And they're out there competing. And Mr. Wood and I are currently conducting interviews for our theater position. So that's happening in the near future. And jazz band has also started. So we do have some things up and running at the middle school, which we're really excited about. For parents, we're continuing to reach out and check in. I have been calling several parents in the last week. So if you see the school number, please answer, because it's probably me checking in. It's not an emergency. It's just me checking in to see how things are going. We've also kicked off our annual fundraiser, and kids are really excited about that. It's being done all online this year. And when I wrote my board report, we were about a third of the way over the weekend. We're half a way to our goal, so that's pretty exciting. And the kids receive these, we call them oinksters. They love them. And staff wear them to support, and we do staff prizes too. So it's been like a really great morale boost. Parents, you'll be receiving a communication with me in regards to jump rope and how you check your students' progress. So that'll be coming up. And I want to say a huge thank you to PTF for their support. On Friday, they helped us provide lunch for our entire staff. And they were able to provide gift cards for teachers to help with the classroom needs. And we are truly, truly grateful for that support and appreciate it so much. The teachers were super appreciative, and it was a great day Friday. And then, again, I want to thank parents for all your support as well. The feedback that we're getting is really positive. We had some technology glitches in the beginning, but I think we've worked some of those out. And parents have just been really patient, supportive, and really supporting every aspect of our school community. So that is greatly appreciated. Questions? Hi, Jen.
What's the fundraiser for?
So what we do in a normal situation, we raise funds so that we can do reward trips for students. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be brainstorming with students ways that we can reward them for their house grades and things like that. Typically, that's what it's based on. So we raise money in student accounts, and it allows us to do different things for students. Oh, I should mention, Halloween is on the horizon, though it may not look like the traditional Halloween at EEMS. We are planning on ways to still have that fun activity with kids. So prizes for students, things like that.
So what is the fundraiser? Can we share that?
Sure, yeah, it's online. It's through a company called Cherrydale, and I believe, I think that I posted something on our Facebook page, but I will get you the information. Kids register online, and they've shared it out through social media, and we're doing everything online, so you can hop right on that and order from there if you're interested.
Great.
So I'll make sure I give you that information.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And these things are so fun. I mean, the kids just love them. So that's the best part of the fundraiser. It's not about the money. It's about the oinksters. Any
Thanks,
other
Erica.
questions? Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Erica.
Thank you.
Mrs. Clifford.
So you have my report, and I did a lot of the same things that Ms. Gavinelli said, from maintenance staff, custodial staff, IT staff, and nutrition staff. And I do want to remind parents that students are able to get free breakfast and free lunch through December. So I think that that's an important piece to make sure that parents are aware of. What I wanted to focus on was something I'm really impressed with teachers is their ability to collaborate and problem solve and troubleshoot. There's been a lot of questions a little bit about, so what does this look like for students on remote learning days? What does this look like when they're not in class? And I chose a couple of Bitmoji classrooms to kind of show you how innovative teachers have been, just to give you a perspective from teachers and what parents are seeing. This is a kindergarten classroom. This is Mrs. Frost, and I'm sharing her math unit. And, oh, she's actually on there. She's not going to be happy with me. Everything in here is linked. So this is a math lesson, and anytime this little arrow here changes to that hand, that's linked. So these are the lessons, and it'll go right to either a video or a lesson in Go Math that was assigned specifically for those kids. So this is just an idea of what it looks like. I'll just click on one so you can see. This is a book that they're reading, and it goes right to a video link. and students can play the video and it reads the book for them. This is an example of teachers being innovative on those off days. We talked about sending work that was authentic and that supported the learning process, and this is what teachers are working on. And not all teachers are here, I'm gonna be honest, but they're working on it, and they're collegial, they're problem solving. This was shown by one teacher. Now there's every kindergarten teacher has a calendar day, which I'm gonna show you now. This is what the October calendar looks like. And this is interactive. It's not live now because I'm sharing it with you, but it's interactive for kids that they can go through a calendar piece, and she does that with her students. So this is an example of how teachers are being innovative and creating those authentic experiences, even though students are not in class. And there is one more. That's E-Week. But it's the same thing. Each of these are interactive activities that students can do. They can read the books, and students are very familiar with this now because they're on E-Week. But as they walk through and doing those things. In kindergarten, as they send papers home, they're doing a lot of pictures and a lot of responding through Seesaw. But this is just kind of an example of how we're innovating to meet our student needs and focusing on instructional practices and the teaching and learning that needs to happen. So as we've worked through this process, obviously there was technical glitches. You need to teach students executive functioning skills, but we are through that process now, and there is really authentic learning happening. And I kind of wanted to share that and build upon my report that you had, that I shared with you, because I know Miss G was going to go before me, and she was going to do the Brenda thing and going to do all that wonderful stuff, but I also wanted to showcase what it looks like and what the teachers are doing and what that work actually looks like for kids. So if you have any questions, feel free to answer, but I thought that was important for you to actually see, so it's tangible, so you're seeing when we're talking about authentic work. Any questions about my report as well?
Yeah, it's really cool to see what you showed us.
Yeah,
I was
there's
having
been a
trouble.
lot of innovation done. I am very, very impressed. I discovered this through a conversation. We have a student teacher that's in kindergarten, and today as part of her requirement, I did a mock interview with her for her teaching process, and she shared how they've been working on this project as a group. So I went down and kind of checked it out and was very, very impressed with what they're doing. I know grade 1 has them too. Everyone's working and building through this process. But this is just an example of what teachers are doing and the type of work they're putting in to make sure that our students have the best educational experiences that they can.
My granddaughter came by today after school and couldn't wait to show us and tell us that it was E-Week. Show us the miniature book and read the miniature book to us that they had done. She was very excited about it.
Any questions about my report or anything? Perfect. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
letting
you.
me share that.
Mrs. Bowles?
Good evening. First, I'm excited to announce that one of our health occupation students from Deer Isle, Emma Plummer, was selected to be a state representative at the 2020-2021 Congress of Future Medical Leaders. This year, it's done completely virtually, but she's going to get to watch a live surgery and be on with delegates from all over the nation of students who want to be medical professionals and get to ask questions with doctors and scientists in real time. So we're really excited about her having that opportunity and very proud of her. We're excited to announce that our Perkins 5 grant was approved. This year, we received more money because of our increasing enrollment. Perkins money is often determined by student population counts. So for us this year, our amount is $102,870. This past year, Perkins 5 federal funding was changed in terms of the requirements we had to meet to apply for that money. The process was very, very different than in the past. And moving forward, we'll have to have an Hctc leadership team that will help formulate the application for the grant and determine how that grant money will be used. That leadership team will have to have representatives from all different constituencies to look at student data, Department of Labor data, and really do a crosswalk of all the different subsections of career and technical education. So we'll be looking for community members to work with us on that moving forward. Our hospitality, travel, and tourism program is going very well. Brian Langley was actually our first official guest speaker to the program over Zoom. He did a 40-minute presentation to our hospitality students and really talked about customer service, infrastructure of starting a business, and what that might look like. He also spoke about the importance of staying professionally developed and also in a business knowing the area in which you're building your business, really making sure you understand the community itself. So the students were really engaged with him and had a great learning experience working with him. This past Friday, we also participated in our professional development day as a district, but for us, staff was busy all day with their CTE state conference. So in the morning, we heard a message from Commissioner Macon, who addressed all of us and spoke a little bit about her appreciation to CTE professionals and trying to be innovative in this difficult time. And then we did an hour training on social emotional learning and what that may look like in a CTE school, followed by a bunch of breakout sessions. Staff had the choice of attending 2 different breakout sessions. Some of those breakout sessions included things like changes in the articulation and dual enrollment process with the community college. Some businesses, Chimbro, Northern Light Healthcare, did their own presentations as well. And also some schools shared some of their new and innovative internship models and how those are adapting with COVID. So staff were able to do those, and then the latter half of the day was spent in tech update groups, getting up-to-date information on how programs are running around the state. So all the CNA instructors met, all the automotive instructors met from around the state. So I've been talking to staff Friday afternoon and today, getting their updates to find out how those went. Speaking of teacher innovation, so this, I went to automotive and was like, what on earth is Mr. Havel doing? So he had his kids synchronously zoomed in with his students in the room, and they were making this on the 3D printer. He had tried for the first time to use the 3D printer. And what this is, let's see if I get this right. I said I would have to phone a friend if I didn't get it right. Students were learning about crankshafts and pistons and how those two components work together in an engine. And this enabled them to see how the parts come together, how they could visually rotate the engine and learn about those parts within that component. He was so excited, and the students were so excited, and several of them were like, is that what mechanical engineering is? And they started asking questions about that, and all of a sudden, some of their automotive thoughts were shifting a little bit. So he was really excited. It was an innovative way. Kids that were synchronously zoomed in were like, are we going to be able to do that tomorrow? So he did it again the next day with those students as they attended in person. So staff really is, to echo what the other administrator said, staff's working really, really hard to try to find innovative ways to keep kids up to date, whether they're remote or they're in person, and keep them all on the same page. So we're really proud of them. Finally, I also want to thank Brenda Thomas. She has been on our Hctc advisory board from the beginning, I think, from when I might have started. So her commitment to CTE has been unwavering. She has attended Brookside Restaurant every Wednesday with Jesse. They attend our program advisory meetings every year in October. Sometimes she sits on the early childhood committee, and sometimes she rotates through the school to learn about all of them. So we're very appreciative of her time and effort. So thank you. Any questions? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Andy's not here, correct? Or is
I
she?
believe she's on the phone.
Okay. Ms. Sargent?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm excited to be there. I look forward to when I can be there in person. But I think everybody got my report, and that included our catalog. So I wanted to share some exciting developments. First and foremost, we have this amazing opportunity to pilot. We're one of several sites in the state, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 sites, I'm not sure, to offer a computer support services micro-credential. And this, if you were going to take it without this special opportunity, it would cost hundreds of dollars. And this year, you can take this for free. So it's an opportunity for those interested in a career in IT, information technology. And it's at little or no cost. Students will achieve a solid foundation in computer skills and certificates qualifying them to work in school tech departments, at IT help desk, and in any business needing IT support. CompTIA A+ completers are known for their creative problem-solving skills. This pilot is going to be offered remotely and includes IC3 digital literacy certificate, work ready credential, and that CompTIA A+. It's done in levels, and IC3 and work ready are being offered this fall. And those who successfully complete those credentials will be eligible for the CompTIA A+ and work experience in the spring of 2021. And so they'll have, because it's a collaboration with the University of Maine system, they'll have the potential to earn up to 9 college credits, 3 level badges, and a micro-credential issued by the University of Maine system if all levels are completed. So we're really excited to be collaborating with the University of Maine system, the Department of Education, and the Lumina Foundation for this exciting opportunity. And I have, if you go to our website, the Ellsworth Adult Ed website, you will find information sessions. In fact, the next one is tomorrow night, if you want to, and that's offered face-to-face online, if you want to learn more about it. Next, our catalog. I think all of you in Ellsworth should have already received our Adult Ed catalog. And we now have this. I'm doing a lot of work on our website, finally learned how to navigate this new platform. And if you go to our website and open our print catalog, you can actually get a link to any class you want from there. So there are different ways to navigate to register for courses. In response to the pandemic, our focus this fall is on academic and workforce training, and most of our enrichment classes are focused on technology and self-care, and almost all are face-to-face online. We are actively working on our spring catalog right now, believe it or not, and are eager to hear from the community about offerings of interest. So if you have any ideas, get in touch with us. One of the things that we recognize and feel is really important to offer to the community is how to access distance education. So we're offering an individualized program that we're calling Get Ready to Zoom. And it's literally, if you sign up for that on our website, you'll get a call from me or somebody from our program, and we'll set up an individualized program, including support downloading Zoom to your devices, which can be done on a tablet, a phone, or a laptop, and also practice sessions. So if you are interested in taking courses but scared about doing accessing Zoom either for classes or some people like it for church services or meetings or volunteer work, we're happy to teach, work with you on that. And we're doing the same thing for our instructors. So couple more things. Our focus my focus this year is on marketing. You should start to see on the Ellsworth High School digital sign notices from our program over the next year. I'm going to be putting things on there regularly. You should see an article in the Ellsworth American this week about how Ellsworth Adult Education is accommodating adult learners in the time of COVID. And Thursday morning, Chris Crockett is going to do an interview with me about adult education. So between that and doing a lot more work on our website, marketing is a big focus. Finally, our program is hybrid, quite different from the way the school is doing it. We're bringing in all of our academic and certificate program folks into our center for an individualized assessment. And depending, critical to student success is starting with online or in-person advising, but then we tailor it to meet the needs of the unique needs of students. Some of our assessments are available online and some in person. So our goal is to establish relationships initially with learners in person and assist them in preparing for remote learning. So we think it's a great opportunity, sort of a silver lining, that the learning the skills to access online learning is really integral in the 21st century. So everybody's situation is different, and we want to assure success. So thanks to the Maine Department of Education, we've secured Chromebooks that will hopefully be available soon for loan to learners who don't have technology at home, and we're working on hotspots and other solutions for our adult learners for at-home learning. Many of our learners do best on site, and we're accommodating learners by providing small group and individual sessions on site at this time. Like everybody else, our teachers are doing some amazing innovations, and I don't want to take the time to share that now because my report has been fairly lengthy, but we're excited about everything that's happening. And I can't emphasize enough the amazing support of IT and the maintenance staff. In addition to COVID, we've just moved, so we've had a lot of needs that feel urgent to us, and so the both of those departments have been incredibly supportive. So thank you, and if you have any questions, I would love to entertain them.
I have a question, Annie. This is Jen.
Hi,
You had
Jen.
mentioned you needed instructors that can teach over Zoom. Are you looking for academic instructors or enrichment instructors, or both?
Thanks for asking that question. The way that we do our academic instruction is a sort of a generalist model so that we have continuity with our students. So we're mostly looking for enrichment or workforce instructors.
Okay, super.
Thanks for asking that.
Yep, you're welcome.
One thing that we are looking for, and it's an experiment, is tech buddies. So I have put the word out in our catalog for people who have some technology skills but want to assist, would be available to assist people who are struggling with technology. And so I think this might be helpful for parents as well as individuals who are struggling with technology to access learning opportunities. So I'm hoping we'll get a response to that. So putting that out there to the community. Thanks, Jen.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any further questions? Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Annie.
Thanks, Annie.
My pleasure.
Rachel?
Rachel's taken on a new set of responsibilities. She's working in budgeting now.
Oh, good, good.
See, I just want to get this set up. real quick.
Isn't that right, Rachel?
What's that?
You're now working in budgeting.
Yes, I'm working in budgeting. Let's see if I can get 185. Let's see if I can do this. Work. Okay. So I am here to talk to you guys a little bit tonight about, I wanted to share with you, we received a grant, our Coronavirus Relief Fund's first grant. It's the CRF 1. We have now on the verge of applying for CRF 2. So this is CRF1, and we wanted to share with the community how we were able to take advantage of these funds and get our school year off to the start that we were able to, and how the funds, there are federal funds that were brought to us, and we wanted to share with the community how we were able to use those to get our school year started. It was broken down into several categories, and the first which that we used were with facilities, rentals, and modifications to meet CDC guidelines. So these were ways in which we were able to retrofit things, make things safe for all of our students and our teachers and our staff. And we spent just about $60,000 on retrofitting our schools to be safe. Those included things like the touch-free intercom that we have now, the tents. We rented some until we could have them delivered that we purchased now, that we have the outdoor tents to allow more space, things like that. So those things you'll see there. We also had another category of materials and supplies that include signage, plexiglass dividers, different ways of communicating, cleaning supplies, and that was the large bulk of what we did. And that included a lot of extra workbooks, science supplies, microscopes, so that kids didn't need to share, right? So lots of different things that kids would often share. They would switch out into a science room. Instead of having one set where we had 2 classes, we would have 2 sets or 4 sets, right? When we were all remote, we were having, every kid would have their own set of things that we were sending home. So there was a lot of different things went into that. And so that included also sanitizing our buses, lots of sanitizing the coolers, even things like that for our food service. And that was the big bulk of our spending, $264,000, $4,000 in equipment, and you can see that there. And then we also had contracted services and additional staff, and that is where we most wanted to spend our funds, because that's where we were able to have additional staff. And that involved paying our teachers this summer to come in and do extra work and to prepare and to think about how they could prepare to have students come into the schools as they have with hybrid teaching, preparing for remote lessons. Our social workers worked all summer to meet the kids' needs. Our nurses worked all summer. Those are not jobs where they usually anticipate working all summer. And they spent a lot of time planning, thinking about how are they going to help us get back to school. And we're so grateful for all the time they spent in. So we were able to compensate them for that. Our social workers have really been having a lot of increased social emotional learning needs with our students because of the pandemic. A lot of extra time in our special ed department for kids with remote learning, special ed plans, IEPs. Our teacher leadership teams, when we talked about planning the summer, when our leadership team met and we came up with ideas about how we would set up our school year, we would have an idea, and then all of the schools would have their own teacher leadership teams, and the principals would have them all meet, and they would take their ideas and meet with their leadership teams and take multiple ideas to them. The leadership teams would all work together for days and hours to take those ideas, put those together, come up with their ideas, and then they would come back to our leadership team and take them back and forth and back and forth, and that's where their input came into play. And so all of these hours, almost $565,000, we're paying those teachers to have input, to plan, to prepare, and that also includes the money that we are adding to some of the hours that they're putting in now as well. In addition, we also have all of our technology. Of course, we know we have our Polycom units, where we're putting the screens at the back of the room for many of our classrooms so that our kids can zoom in and watch the classrooms and watch our lessons. And we have extra computers so that kids can be at home. We have some of our teachers who are working from home. We need extra laptops and that kind of thing. And that came to $370,000. In total, we've spent, the grant allotment that we received was $1,257,508. So $1,257,508.53. So that was CRF 1. Now, we've just found out, and that all has to be spent by December 30th. So that was quite a tall order, because there's lots of things out there that we would like to purchase. For instance, teachers' contracts, but not every teacher is able to work until the 30th. Then we found out that we were going to be able to receive more money, which is very exciting, $1.3 million. So we were very much looking forward to that, and then found out that we have to spend that money by December 30th. So that is our new challenge.
Yeah, just add one piece, Rachel. You're doing an excellent job. One thing I think it's important for people to know that the parameters on the use of these funds, you can see, are in great part described by the spreadsheet that Rachel's provided. But also, it was very clear that we needed to use these funds to provide for the safe reopening of schools. There were that type of parameters on them, and Rachel's exactly right. They need to be expended, and the items be put into service by December 30th. So,
And they
Rachel's
also-
leading into the next part of the grant, which is part 2, which you're going to find have similar parameters.
A
So if you
little,
have another
right,
question.
similar parameters. But also, we have to be very careful that they're not things that we would just like to have. They have to be very closely tied to things that we need because of the pandemic. So when we buy, so for example, we've been able to purchase outdoor volleyball nets because we're not able to have an indoor volleyball season. Now, the nice thing about that is that we'll now have outdoor volleyball nets, and that'll offer us some other opportunities when the pandemic is over. But we are initially able to purchase them because it allowed us to have a safer volleyball season. So each of the things that we have to purchase, while we may gain benefit from having them later, they had to have a very specific reason for having them now that was related to the pandemic. So as it came to purchasing these items, they had to be extremely related. So we weren't able to, it's the difference between supplanting and supplementing our local budget. We weren't able to just buy more of something that we had already planned to buy anyway, unless it was exactly double, for example, because we needed enough for 2 sets where we only had half before, because every child needed to have one. So that's been one of the challenges. I think you
Yeah,
had
I
a
just
question.
had a couple questions before you go on to CRF2 on CRF1. What was the amount available, the total amount available for CRF1?
Exactly this amount.
So we spent exactly to the penny.
Wouldn't let a dime go.
Okay.
Now, some of it, to be fair, some of it has not been expended yet, but we've budgeted it to the dime. So particularly the contracted services here, where the additional salaries for additional staff, that includes, we have been able to budget to have 2 additional staff in the high school, the elementary, middle school, 4 staff, right, total? 4 staff in the elementary, middle school every day, 2 staff in the high school, and 1 in Hctc every day to have an additional staff member. So we costed that out all the way till December 30th. So that amount allows until that date. We costed out 4 additional hours per teacher per week to pay them for
December
the
30th.
additional time that they're spending. So some of this has not been spent, but it includes that amount of money all the way till the very end. The other thing that it includes is an additional, I think, $95,000 in masks, gowns, cleaning, sanitizing, plexiglass, and all the things. Josh Hendershot just gave me an entire list of all the supplies that we would need to be able to keep everyone stocked and all the sanitizing things necessary.
From CRF1.
From
CRF1.
For
That
this,
was-
for CRF1.
okay.
We want to make sure
Okay.
that we're completely stocked up. Yep.
And one of the things to go along with the PPE and the cleaning materials, you can expend these funds retroactive to March 16th, I
First.
believe it was. So even though we were supposed to receive materials from the Department of Ed with PPE, which we have received now, Josh Hendershot and Chuck Trumbull and their staff, they started purchasing things immediately. Once we knew we were going to have this money, they started purchasing immediately so that we would not be out of the supplies we have.
Because we didn't receive notice of this grant until much after March 1st.
Right.
But they made it contingent retroactively to that date.
Knowing school departments had purchased all of these things, yeah.
Right, that we would be able to. And so we kind of costed that piece out. And so we have made sure that we would spend every piece of it.
And we have to make sure that we demonstrate that these are things that we did not budget for. You know, Rachel mentioned supplementing and supplanting. Did not budget for, and it had to be COVID-related. So our staff's really done, and Rachel will talk more about this in CRF too, but it wasn't just a matter of sitting down and saying, "Okay, how are we going to expend these dollars?" It was talking to a lot of people. You know, when you look at some of the supplies to support classrooms, to support having all students have a set of materials, or in some cases, programs that weren't able to be offered because of health and safety reasons. I think some physical education programs, we were able to purchase certain types of equipment for those programs that allowed them to do things that are socially and physically distanced. So really had to make a strong case for why you need these things.
Right.
A lot of good input from all of our staff
Yeah.
across the board.
So the PE teachers have been extremely innovative. Julie Hammer came up with weight rotation stations where they could each be at a rotation center, and so they would have weights and their own jump rope, and there was like places that they would all have socially distanced areas that they could do their own stations, and they're going to be having heart monitors, and so they've really been thinking of different ways. We bought a golf set, like a whole golf course, mountain bikes that they could be socially distanced. It's really been it's been exciting to see. There's been lots of different ways where the library is able to buy ebooks now, so that they're not having to come down to the library, and we're going to be really bulking up the libraries with ebooks now so that they can get them online and not be coming down to the library and be able to social distance. So there's a lot of ways that we're really going digital and also finding ways to be social distance but getting the most out of their curriculum. It's the silver lining. People are getting very innovative, as April said. It's exciting.
So I also noticed, the professional development line, it doesn't have anything on it.
Yeah, and I can explain that. The reason for that is that much of our professional development is year-long. For instance, the Cultural Competency Institute that several of us are signed up for is a year-long program. And so we're using other money to pay for that because anything we use this money for ends on December 30th. So we have a CARES grant, which is a different funding stream that is due on December 2022. So we're using that smaller grant. It's a much smaller grant, but it goes longer to do anything that goes past December 30th. So professional development that goes longer, we're charging to that. Subscriptions, for example, Zoom. We need Zoom for a year. So we're charging Zoom to that grant. RAS Kids, we need that for a year. We don't want to stop. So we could prorate it, but it's easier financially and budget-wise to put that in a separate grant. So that's going a different place. Also, professional development, we have our Title II grant. And so a lot of what we're doing for professional development, I had already written into our Title II grant, which is only for professional development. And the professional development that's required because of COVID, only because of COVID, like the distance learning playbook, that is things that I had already built in to other things because that was something that was interesting to us ahead of time. So I had folded that into other grants already. So originally, the other thing that's interesting too is that the state, when they released CRF, didn't tell us that it was due December 30th. They changed their mind. So the original guidance was that we were allowed to do subscriptions and we were allowed to do year-long things. And then they changed their plans. So a lot of people ended up taking professional development and internet subscriptions out. There's been a few changes along the way.
I'm sure there has.
Yes. So the grant that's due 2022 is about 214,000. And so we still haven't written it completely yet. We just kind of keep holding it over there for all the yearly things that people need. And we keep charging it to that one. And then when we write it, well, it'll almost be spent already. Because, and they don't have a due date on that one because it's a much longer grant, but it's a much smaller amount of money. So we're holding that one off for all the things the resources that people tend to need that are digitized resources that are helping people teach remotely. There's a lot of really good resources that we're trying to bring in that are helping people do things online. Things like, there's something called Spelling City that digitizes spelling work that are helping folks and things like that.
I have another question. I don't know if you were headed into this, but what is the amount for the second CRF? Is it
The second
identical?
grant is about 1.3 million.
1.3. Thank you.
And part of the conversation about that, it talks a little bit about the needs of the school district, which is kind of a little bit more about our item number 6, which kind of goes into that, so I can hold off on that conversation to fold into the next.
Sure.
That's another piece.
The
But I
same
wanted to
parameter-
share with you where we are so far.
Same parameters on that CRF2, however, they need to be expended by December 30th. Period.
And it's also,
We've
as,
been working to advocate at the federal level. Your association, School Boards Association, our association, many other associations have been advocating. There has been no
movement.
desire to move that. So Rachel will talk about it under item 6, but Rachel has spent the better part of the last couple of weeks.
meeting with teachers.
She's been doing a shopping list with staff around the district.
Well, we
It's a
thought it
little
was an
more detailed than that, but
We thought it was an opportunity
It's a great
to
needs
find out
assessment.
what money could fix, because money can't fix a lot of this. We know that, but, if there was money if money could fix something, we wanted to find out what it was. But as Amy said, it's kind of like a moving target, like the Perkins grant, it's gonna be a totally different process. From CRF 1 to CRF 2, you're looking at the application process. All they required was this and that description of what we were gonna spend it on. That was the detail that was required. The next application, there are 8 parameters that have to be filled out for every cost center. And it's due tomorrow night. So, it's a totally different, they keep kind of just pivoting. So,
But there's great opportunity to support what we're trying to do, to support our staff
yeah,
members.
so it's worth doing.
Keep everyone
It's just-
safe.
It's just, you just never know what you're up against each time.
Sure. Thank
So,
you.
I can talk about that next. Any other questions about this in particular? Okay.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Mr. Higgins?
Good evening. I sent you guys, you board members, my report earlier this afternoon. Just before I talk a little bit about enrollment for October 1, a couple of things to note. One is this is preliminary October 1 enrollment. The deadline to certify this is supposed to be October 15th, which I think they're going to extend. I hope they're going to extend. But I wanted to share them. I typically do at the October meeting. As you're looking at the columns, however, one thing I want you to do, so that when you look at it, you won't be confused. So if you look at grade 1, October 1, 2020. No, excuse me, grade 2, 2020. Your correlation to that would be grade K, 2019. Okay? And I think I see one mistake that I've made here. Just in my typing, but when you look at this, actually, I'm very pleased. Typically, you don't hear a superintendent say you're pleased when you see enrollments down by 39 across the district. However, if you think about what's been going on with COVID, we've seen a number of things. One is, we've seen a number of families opt to go for a homeschooling program out of concern. We've seen the numbers go up by almost 20 in our district this year. The other thing that we have seen is a higher level of transients with people in the district, people moving in, people moving out. A lot of people who had challenges were forced to move in with other families or move to a different location. I frankly expected to see our numbers go down more than what they did, which would be a concern for a number of reasons. One, we certainly don't want to lose enrollment. But two, when you think about budgeting, the October 1 enrollment date is important for a number of reasons. You know, you've heard Ray Daly talk about it for free and reduced lunch. And that 50% threshold is an important one. But the October 1 numbers are also used to determine your state subsidy for subsequent years. So with COVID coming on, a lot of school districts around the state are looking at what are the numbers going to be like for October 1, 2020 as compared to October 1, 2019. You know, our enrollment has slowly been going up over the past several years, which has been good for us subsidy-wise. If we were to see a precipitous drop, that may be an impact on subsidy for next year. So the fact that these numbers have only gone down a little bit is a positive thing. The other thing that we are doing at the state level is advocating for the Department of Ed to use October 1, 2019 figures for next year's budget rather than October 1, 2020. But if you look across the span, and the one change I would encourage you to make, the kindergarten numbers are backwards. October 1, 2020 should be 73. The 89 should be over on October 1, 2019. And that's where you would see the 16 negative difference. But really, when you look at the total enrollment, 1,305 students, October 1, 2020 preliminary, compared to 1,344 last year, is not a significant drop, about 2.9%. For the most part, it can be attributed to the homeschool piece across the grade spans, but also, if you look at kindergarten, that's a drop of 16 from what we had last year. So if you look at our grade span summary, pre-K through 4, October 1 of 2019 was 483, October 1, 2020 is 451. 16 of those students, half of them come in the kindergarten class. Grades 5 through 8, you see a difference of 10 students. And at the high school, you see a difference of 3 students. So really, when you look at all that's going on with COVID, the numbers really are not bad at all. Now, again, those are preliminary numbers. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be working with IT to go through and find out, are students coded properly? Are they listed in the, as a resident student, as a tuition student? Are they still attending school? You know, we have a number of those pieces to work out. But typically, there's not a great deal of change between the preliminary numbers and the final certified numbers. So all in all, enrollment is a positive. A reminder to all of you as board members, remember the deadline for registering for the virtual fall MSMA conference is October 21st. I know Teresa sent something out to you today. So if you're interested in attending, please get back to her as soon as possible. Significant changes, it's going to be held on Friday the 30th and Saturday the 31st, Halloween. It's never been held that way before. So even if a weekend happens to be a challenge for you, the virtual platform will have all of the activities through November 8th. So even if you're not able to attend on one or both days, you'd still be able to participate, and it will be well worth your money. I know I've heard other members who have attended say, attend, it's a great opportunity, please do so. And if you look at the schedule of events and activities, there's a lot of great stuff on there again this year. To follow up a little bit on what Mrs. Clifford said earlier, food service, yes, all students, that's not just free and reduced lunch students, it's all students are able to eat for free at no charge through December 31st. However, we just learned today that there are 12 waivers that have been extended through the end of the school year. So students are going to be able to eat free through the remainder of the school year. That's fantastic, and the school department still gets reimbursed. The other piece I wanted to follow up on is the Daycare Grant. This is another component of the CRF grants. And I want to give credit to Rachel Coleman Ramos for putting that grant together. She's doing budgeting, she's doing a lot of grant work. Thank you, Rachel. I mentioned at the last meeting that we found out that we were going to be awarded the grant. We actually were. We're working through the invoicing process right now so that we're hoping to see that the cost for families who are accessing those services, eligible families accessing those services at the Moore Center or with Trip Family Daycare, we'll see the cost they pay down to nothing, retroactive to September 14th. So as you have a lot of times when you have the federal-based grants, the paperwork and the details take a little while to work out. We're almost there, but it's really great news. Donnie Saunders will be happy if he's listening tonight, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. On October 6th, we had delivered the second propane bus from the VW settlement grant. Mr. Saunders was at a leadership team meeting that morning, and he asked to be dismissed because he wanted to go out and receive the bus. So that's great news. Great for our bus fleet, also great for the environment. We do have 3 letters of resignation. Chelsea Salisbury, longtime Ed Tech 3 at EEMS, is moving. So she would be departing. Mike Perlman, who was the theater director at EEMS, has moved on, and Ginger Staunton, Director of Instructional Technology, has resigned. New staff hired since our last meeting: Annette Macco, be an Ed Tech 3 at Ellsworth Elementary Middle School; Micah Sanders, a custodian at Ellsworth High School; and Laura DiDonato will be an administrative assistant, working through the central office in special education and with Kids Piece. We still have a number of vacancies to fill. We have a K-4 behavior teacher at EMS, K-4 life skills teacher, elementary art teacher, K through 4, grades 5 through 8 resource teacher, long-term sub math teacher at the high school, still looking for an ed tech at Hctc, and we're now looking for a director of IT. To echo what our principals and directors said, we've made it through just over a month of the school year, and I know we have an item coming up a little bit later in the agenda, but I would like to express my deepest appreciation to all of our teachers, our administrators, and our support staff for the work they're doing in adjusting to a very different way of life in education. The work they're doing is amazing. I said it last spring, they moved heaven and earth to take care of our kids. They're doing the same this year. And even with the amount of planning and preparation that was put into being over the last several months, there are still challenges, there are still changes, but our staff is doing a great job. You saw examples and heard examples of innovation tonight that's happening across the district. So again, a great deal of thanks goes to the people that work for this school department. I'd also like to express my heartfelt appreciation to our students and to our families, not only for their efforts to do the best they can as students, but also for the parents for supporting the children both while they're in school and while they're learning remotely. It's also important to note that so many parents have reached out to teachers and to building level administrators with questions and concerns, and our teachers and building level administrators have done a great job in responding to them. So I want to encourage people. It's through that type of direct communication that we'll continue to move forward in a positive and productive manner and keep improving things like you're hearing a little bit about tonight, but also be able to address things that may not be working as well as they were planned. But again, thank you to all and for everyone for their hard work and their patience and their understanding as we continue to move forward. So with that, take any questions if you have them.
I have a quick question, Dan. When you mentioned the CRF Daycare Grant.
Yep.
And that those funds will be retroactive to September 14th.
Yep.
Does that indicate a reimbursement to
Yep.
families?
Well,
How does
that's
that
one of the
work?
pieces we're working out, Jen, because we're not allowed to pay directly to families. We have to pay directly to the child care facility. So we're trying to
Okay.
work that out with both of the providers that were part of the grant.
Okay.
Two providers that signed on. But we were allowed to go back to the grant notification date, which was September 14th. So
Okay.
that's a good piece.
Was that, those funds, were those to be used for, also for the facilities to come up to speed, like our,
Yeah.
Designation of
What we're
item.
looking at is the costs that Director Farragher spoke of, and even though Sue Tripp came into the process a little bit later on, the fees that they're charging, they have to provide for us what's included in those fees. So how much of it is staffing, how much of it is utilities, how much of it is supplies, et
Okay.
cetera. When they provide us with that invoice, we will reimburse them after we draw it down, and they'll be able to hopefully reimburse families back to September 14th from now, and then moving forward, not have to charge them.
no charge? Okay,
Yep.
thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, that's big news.
That's
Yeah.
great news.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Any further questions?
Do you have
Abby?
the letters of resignation with you?
Oh, I started circulating, I guess they didn't make it.
Yeah. We haven't been, on this table, we haven't seen them all summer.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
That's an oversight, sorry about that.
Item H, committee reports.
I have one. I don't know if you want to go.
Oh, go
For
ahead,
policy?
Karen.
Okay. Curriculum Committee met on October 8th. It was Abby, Dan, Rachel, and I. Basically, we met to discuss a kind of a schedule of upcoming meetings so that we can cover topics that we find of importance to be updated on. Those are going to include the hybrid plan in more of a detailed way to discuss the remote learning and the equitable education piece. Current curriculum in the schools, what's been changed in the past 2 to 3 years and how that has been affecting our students and staff. assessments and scores. And that's actually something Abby had brought up and we thought was a good idea, that in probably the early part of the year, once we have new board representation, to actually have Rachel come and do a board workshop to get everybody up to speed on all the assessments that we do in our district and how those scores and that data is used by our staff. And yeah, and then review of any materials of new programs that are going to be coming, that need to be implemented this year or coming up. So we kind of set a schedule, and we expect to have to meet probably at least monthly till the early part of the year, so.
Also, the policy committee met, which most of what we talked about, we're gonna go over in a little bit, just to let you know. We have obviously a lot more to discuss, but there are just some small updates and a few things that we are looking into still. But yeah, it's pretty much detailed here. And also the transportation met, which, would you like to talk about transportation?
Well, that also is going to be coming up on the agenda shortly, so. We got some equipment to talk about purchasing, so.
Right.
But yeah, it was, it's a good
Finance
meeting.
met on October 8th to discuss the bids for snow removal, and that will be coming up later also.
Mhm.
So. Okay. Old bit-
Bids for snow removal really just don't,
I'm so sorry.
doesn't sound right, I'm sorry.
I went to the grocery store the other day, and they had snow shovels lined up at where they put seasonal things.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Okay, old business? New business. Consideration of teacher nomination.
I'm sad to say that we do not have one to bring to you. We're still looking, we're still advertising, we're still putting the word out. Principals who have vacancies are working with the universities to see if we have people that are going to be graduating in December, or people that may be able to be certified on an emergency basis. We're going to leave that item on the agenda until we can get the positions filled, but we do not have one for tonight. Sorry to say.
J2, discussion and consideration of snow removal, salting, sanding bids for 2020, 2021. So we met, and Rob and I are both on this committee, and looked at the bids that were opened, decided that we wanted to keep the snow removal and the sanding and salting were two separate bids, but we wanted to make sure the same company was doing the snow removal and the sanding and salting for each one of the facilities. So our decision was that EEMS and EHS bids will go to Clark Construction, and Hctc and Bus Garage will go to RF Jordan and Sons Construction. The bid for EEMS was $1,400. 14,000, I'm sorry,
Wow, I was gonna
14,000.
say,
Woo.
that's like-
If it was 1,400, we'll take it.
Ellsworth High School was 16,500. HCTC was 5,000, and the Bus Garage was 6,500. And that totals $42,000.
So I'll make a motion to approve and award the snow removal and salting sanding bids for 2020 to 2021 as presented and recommended by the Finance Committee.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Okay.
Hearing none? All those in favor? Thank you.
And now that you've taken that action, it's going to snow tomorrow.
I don't see that.
We had frost this morning.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it
The
was.
dogs almost dragged me off the deck.
J3, first read of policies. Policy Committee?
For we're gonna recommend a motion to acknowledge and accept the review of the following policies with no changes as recommended by the policy committee. BG, policy settings. BGR, policy adoption procedure. DIA, technology protection program. DJ, bidding and purchasing requirements. DJ/R, bidding and purchasing requirements. EBCA, comprehensive energy management plan, no changes but requesting administration to review plan for inclusion of language addressing provisionals of social, emotional, and mental health responses for national emergencies, devastating events that may impact social, emotional, mental health needs of students and staff. EEBB, private use of school vehicles. EF, food service management. GBEE, employee computer internet use. GBEE/R, employee computer internet use regulations rules. GDF, support staff employment. EEA, student transportation services, no changes but request information, RE training. Phew.
Well done.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Any discussion?
Could I just say
Oh,
one
sorry.
Just so folks know, the policy committee is at the outset of the 3-year or triennial policy manual review. What Jen and Abby opted to do is take policies that may have COVID relationship first, and that's what you're seeing here. I think you saw at a previous meeting. We'll continue that. I think there are a few more, but then we'll go right back through sections A through K, I believe is the last one. But a lot of good work, a lot of good conversation at that meeting. It's not just a matter of looking at the policies, but really good discussions, a lot of good questions.
And may I ask a question? So, so for EBCA, Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, there's no changes, but requesting administration to review the plan for inclusion of the language that Abby described. So if we approve a first read of that this evening, then the second read may include those.
Most likely not.
Most likely there'll be a second first read. If-
Well,
if we-
no, there won't be any changes to the policy, but there may be changes to the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan,
Uh-huh.
which will probably be the topic of your next workshop.
Okay.
Where that conversation came from was, and I actually was going through that today, each of the response scenarios that we have does list some sort of a response by different members of the emergency response team, which includes our social work and guidance staff. The conversation at the policy committee was to make sure that we had that, because even though there's a component in there for a pandemic, there really isn't one for, I think that the term was national emergencies, and Abby gave a couple of examples of that. Just wanted to make sure that we had that as part of our response plan because of the importance of the social and emotional well-being of students and staff.
I see. So that doesn't
It won't
necessarily.
change the policy.
Won't change the
but
policy,
There'll
but-
probably be some minor tweaks to the plan.
Yeah.
Plan actually has a lot in it.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. Well, that sounds good.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? 5-0. Okay.
Recommended motion to approve first read of the following amended policies as presented and recommended by the policy committee. BEDFA, abstentions. GBEBB, staff conduct with students. GBO, family care leave. So-
Second.
Discussion?
I don't know if you,
Yeah, I've read the,
everybody read them, so
yeah.
that means
Do
that.
you have anything you wanted to add about why these changes were?
Do you want to?
Go ahead.
I'll take it. So the abstentions part, we had discussed that actually came up as just a recent question in our city. So an abstention, I guess that's all I'm going to say. The abstentions, when it's listed here, obviously if you have a conflict of interest,
Right.
that would be a reason to abstain. If you do not and you abstain, then it is considered a vote in favor. What we felt was that maybe this should actually have wording in there that when a board member needs to abstain for a conflict of interest, that be stated, so that it is clear that it's not necessarily a vote in favor, but that that gets kind of clarified for voting purposes.
And that language is included on BEDFA that came to you. It's the last sentence of that paragraph. States it pretty clearly.
We thought
Did
it
that
might-
reflect the language you ladies were talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
We just thought it might eliminate any question
Mhm.
going forward.
Yeah.
Most likely, anything in our realm is going to be pretty simply because the conflicts of interest that the school board and the school department lists are basically financial and, I mean, so it's kind of rules out any gray area.
Mhm.
And the other two are just tweaking those policies to reflect, you know,
Current times.
Yeah, current days and times, or,
Mhm.
and I think the Family Care Leave Act, it was, I can't remember if it was an update from the state,
Yeah.
or just we were looking for a clearer language. But yeah.
Yep.
Both of those policies had an update from Maine School Management. You can see in your materials, there was a question around use of social media and the language of friending, which we're looking for a little bit of legal feedback on.
Right.
And also the GBO did make a connection to family medical leave, and also a conversation that a previous iteration of the board had about how many hours could actually be used towards family care leave. So, again, good discussions on those policies.
Yeah.
Clarifies all of that for our staff and,
Further discussion? Hearing none? All those in favor? 5-0. Election of delegate and alternate to the Maine School Board Association Delegates Assembly.
Included in your packet was a statement about the purpose of the delegate assembly, so that everyone knew what it was. What the board has typically done is elected a delegate and an alternate to carry the board's thoughts forward on the vote. And it's an important piece. These come from your board of directors as the Maine School Boards Association. They're well thought out. There's a committee that does those, so.
May I speak to this one? So I think it would be, I would recommend appointing somebody who has not had any experience being at the Maine School Management, the MSMA conference or participate in the delegate assembly, because it's a good way to get some insight into the workings of this process, and like, if you've done it before a few times, you've had that insight, but if you've never been there, it would be good to gain it. So I think, how many of us are going to it? I know you, Jen, you said you were gonna, and Abby.
To the conference in October,
Yeah.
it's Halloween. I have kids, that's
Okay.
not gonna.
Well, Abby, one thing to think about,
Friday
though,
the
it's
30th.
virtual and,
Yeah,
but
it's
but
still
all
not
this,
gonna
all
work.
this, no, but all the things that they're going to have, not the delegate assembly, but all the programs that they have are gonna be on their virtual platform through November 8th.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can
So-
watch it later.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
delegate assembly part, you would have to be present live for that. And that's normally that's on the first day of the
it's on
conference.
Friday afternoon.
Yeah. So that wouldn't interfere with Halloween. But will you be able to attend that day, Jen?
Mhm.
Okay. And
Yep,
Rob,
I
are you
was
planning on
to do it
attending?
Friday.
I was not.
Okay,
I can.
yeah. Well, then I would nominate Jen
I would
to be the
second that.
delegate, if she's willing to do it.
Would you accept it?
Sure.
Okay, there you go.
So is that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion to appoint Jen Alexander as the delegate to the MSBA Delegate Assembly.
I second that motion.
Discussion?
Yeah, I do, actually. This would be a good time to, even though it's a first read, to practice the abstention piece. So I think this would be a good conflict of interest. In voting.
Is it a conflict of interest to vote for yourself?
I don't think it is. I've seen many times people abstain, but you don't have to.
Yeah, no, I don't, it doesn't, I've never thought it was a conflict of interest to vote for yourself, so.
No.
I've seen it happen, though. That's the one time I think we've had abstentions on the
Yep.
school board, is if,
One of the very few times.
for something like this, but I'd say go ahead and vote for yourself, Jen.
I did plan on attending. I actually had set the day aside to do the Friday, and then,
Uh-huh.
of course, noticing some of the timeframes on Saturday, that's why I checked with Teresa
Yeah.
today. I didn't want to spend money for the school department that was unnecessary,
Yeah.
but if we can see it till November 8th, it's perfect, because the clinics
Yeah, the
on
clinics-
Saturday, I did want to see, it's
I'm
Halloween.
kind of excited.
I have a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited about being able to view the clinics after the
After
fact.
the fact,
because
that's what I was
you
thinking.
can't- You can only go, there might be 5 clinics happening at the same time. You can only
Right.
go to one,
Yeah,
but now you can go to them all.
yeah. Benefit of virtual.
It's much
Yeah.
better.
Yeah,
Any
that's
further
fine.
discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. Okay.
And
Do
you
we need to
typically appoint an
appoint-
alternate in the event that
Okay.
something comes up. You can choose to do that as a board, you don't have to.
I move that we appoint Paul Marcosian as the alternate.
Since you were planning on attending as well.
Yep.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Thank you.
Did you vote, Jen?
Yep.
I didn't see your hand.
She nodded her head.
Okay.
Close enough.
I don't have my glasses on, my
Alright.
peripheral's not working right now. so.
Discussion of proposed MSBA resolutions for 2020, 2021. I think we all received the resolutions regarding distance learning and stronger family support for education, equity in education, and board meeting remote participation.
Make a motion to support the following MSBA resolutions as presented and direct the ESB delegate to vote at the MSBA delegate assembly.
I second that motion.
Abby, was that you?
Yeah, sorry.
Nope.
Discussion?
So can someone just explain this a little better to me, since this is the first time?
Sure. So the MSBA board meets and they come up with these recommended policies. They've gotten input from board members around the state. And I know we didn't have a lot of time to view them, and we didn't have an opportunity in our workshop to discuss them, but, so the delegates go there and presumably their board, they've met as a board and agreed to support or not support these motions. And so you'll see when you're at the delegate assembly, the first motion will be made, and there'll be people speaking on it. The delegates can get up and speak, and either for or against it. And then there's a vote, and they have certain rules about how much of a majority you need for it to pass. And then I've seen some years where the motions, some of the motions did not pass, but usually the majority of them do. And what else is there anything else?
Well,
you
yeah,
go
I
with the
guess,
Do you have
delegate
questions about
assembly?
any of the specific
as the
motions?
delegate, I'm to take the opinion of the board of all of these and vote, but we haven't discussed it.
Yeah, so this would be a good opportunity to discuss it.
And
Okay.
that's one of the problems with this. These were forwarded to you the day that they came out, and as you
Right.
know, it didn't give you a whole lot of time to look at them.
Yeah.
Usually the resolutions are very well done. For example, if you look at the first piece, development of distance learning plans, this is one of the, I think Rachel used the term silver linings earlier with regard to the CRF funds. This is a potential silver lining because we have some kids who thrive with distance learning. This would be a mechanism whereby MSBA would work to support a plan to make distance learning not just something that's a necessity, but an option. And I'm really doing that in a very broad
Generalized,
overview of
yeah.
that. You folks have read these, this would be a good time to ask those questions, because I think there have been times where, it might have been last year or the year before,
Yeah.
Paul, you or Rob, I forget who the delegate was, where there were some changes made at the delegate assembly that actually may have come in part from this board. There's members of this board that didn't agree with it.
Mhm.
So it's worth a few minutes of your time.
Yep.
One of them was changing the amount of school days
Mm-hmm,
that did not pass at that meeting.
right.
I remember that one. Okay.
Yeah, there was a motion proposal to extend the school year, to make all schools in Maine have 180 student days. And our board voted to approve that, but the motion did not carry in the delegate assembly. So we've got one on board meeting, remote participation. And I can read this. The Maine School Board Association believes that what we have learned about remote participation in board meetings during the coronavirus pandemic supports a law change allowing such participation absent a health emergency. So the technology is available to allow robust discussion on issues and real-time, face-to-face deliberations, not only with fellow board members, but with the public. So MSBA supports introducing legislation in the 130th legislature that would allow such meetings under public records law if the local school board votes to adopt the practice. And this is typical, a lot of these motions what it is the School Board Association is recommending that the legislature take up and adopt a certain law.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't really carry that much, carries no power of enforcement. Just because the
Just a
MSBA
recommendation.
Delegate Assembly votes for this doesn't mean the legislation is gonna follow our recommendation.
Okay.
But it gets some conversations going and can be part of the impetus for new legislation.
And how often do they do this? Just annually?
Yep,
Okay. So just prior to the delegate assembly?
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And they usually send them out on just shorter notice.
Can we make a recommendation for a resolution? Would that be earlier?
Yeah. And then, so there's 4 of these, so we may as well go through them all and talk about them a little bit. Equity in education. This one says all students, regardless of their race, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, ancestry, national origin, or disability, deserve equitable opportunities and support to learn in Maine's public schools. The Maine School Boards Association believes all district leaders should facilitate a self-examination and discussion around recognizing bias and stereotyping and adopt policies and practices that eliminate them. And the rationale is that bias exists sometimes in overt actions in our schools. There should be high aspirations for all students. There's a growing awareness that bias is often not recognized or acknowledged in our public schools. It will require an intentional process to change practices that lead to stereotypical behavior and help assure that all students have equal opportunity to succeed. So, this is I read this as a motion that would perhaps not carry, it doesn't have any specific directives, just that this district leader should facilitate a self-examination and discussion around this topic of bias.
That actually came up in our policy meeting, so I think it's good that this is moving forward, because it's an interesting time right now,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of sensitive discussions and topics. So we had discussed the opportunity, and maybe in October at our workshop, to go over adopting a policy for our own school department. Obviously, this is gonna be maybe a statewide discussion anyway, that we have a policy in place that, states that we, will not accept any, biased opinions either way on topics that are being instructed. And so, we had started looking into the guidance for that. There is a recommended policy from the Maine State, Maine School Management Association
Mhm.
about that anyway, so we'd kind of
So
looked it over.
you're looking at that policy?
Mhm.
I think this topic ties into a lot of things that are already taking place in the school department. You know, If you look at Rachel's challenge, you look at Kindness Matters, you look at the professional development opportunity that many of you are participating in, that Rachel referenced earlier.
Mhm.
The next session is next Monday night. This ties right into that, the things that are already happening in the district.
Mhm.
I think it would give us that opportunity to having a policy in place then allows us to, if we need to act on
Mhm.
such a, we have the backup to it.
Another one here is building stronger family support for education. And MSMA believes greater involvement by parents or guardians in their child's education is essential to assure better outcomes for students. Parents or guardians who are not engaged in their child's early learning at home are less likely to be engaged when their child goes to school. Outreach to and support of those who care for children in the home are essential first steps in creating a successful partnership between caregivers and schools. The ultimate goal is to identify the needs of both adults and children in the household and connect them to appropriate services and learning opportunities. And the rationale is there is no question parental involvement improves educational outcomes for students, but not all parents know how to reach out or feel comfortable doing it. Many working parents and caregivers also have schedules that don't make school visits or teacher contacts easy. School boards working with their administrators should facilitate that engagement, which supports better outcomes for children and adults and opens up opportunities for both.
I think we should support this.
Yeah, I can't see anything not to support in that one.
Right.
And the final one, is development of distance learning plan. The coronavirus pandemic upended classroom instruction in school districts and revealed both positives and shortcomings in our ability to do distance learning. What was implemented by necessity should now be improved by design. Distance learning should not just be the fallback in a crisis, but rather used to provide equitable learning opportunities to all Maine students regardless of their location. The Maine School Boards Association calls for a plan that addresses professional development for teachers, assessment of devices, high-quality connectivity in all parts of the state, development of online curriculum appropriate to age groups, and intentional use of online learning to enhance curriculum and expand learning opportunities for all students. Funding for online learning should be part of the school funding formula. MSBA will actively participate in the development and implementation of such a plan. And the rationale is our experience with distance learning when schools were required to shut down because of COVID, and what we will learn as we reopen schools under hybrid models could help us make better use of technology to support instruction and broaden curriculum options for all students. Distance learning can supplement in-person instruction and also support subject areas where there is a teacher shortage. That, coupled with increased broadband access, is key to educational equity for Maine students.
Yeah, yep, they all seem pretty straightforward.
I think that we support all of these.
Yep, so Abby's saying we should, recommending supporting all of them, and we can, I was gonna mention we could take each one individually, or we can make a motion to support all of them. I think the proposed, the recommended motion says to support all of them, so.
I'd make a motion.
All right,
You
Well,
want-
well,
Did we-
you've already got a
We
motion
did.
in a second.
This
Rob-
is discussion.
Rob made a motion, Abby seconded it.
Yeah.
And I think your motion was to support all four of them, is that
Right,
right?
right.
And that was your second, Abby, all four?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Excellent.
Okay.
now, at the delegate assembly, it's possible that some of these, anyone can get up to the delegate assembly and make a motion to amend the resolution. And so that has happened at every delegate assembly I've been to. So it's likely that, it's possible at least, and perhaps likely that some of these resolutions will be amended. And then whoever, so Abby, as the delegate, you'll have to,
Jen.
just think on your feet and say, well, does this fit with what the board tasked me to vote on? And I'm sure you'll do fine with that, but that's just a little
I see.
nuance to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
J6, status reporting on opening of schools.
And I think you got a little bit of a flavor of this earlier when the principals and directors did their reports, but a couple of things. One is I had asked them to come in and talk a little bit about the instructional practices thus far in the first 4 or 5 weeks. You're probably going to hear a few things you've already heard. But I want to open up by just saying a few things. One, just over a month of the school year is behind us, and as I said before, I'm extremely proud of how hard our staff is working to implement plans that were developed over the summer. In addition to abiding by the DOE guidance and the health and safety requirements, our teachers, administrators, and staff have worked extremely hard to implement the instructional program they developed over the summer months. Even with all of the time spent planning and preparing, all of our staff have met to make adjustments to the way they fulfill their responsibilities. And that encompasses everybody, including our teachers, and that's what your principals will talk about tonight. I'm also very proud of how our students and staff have adjusted to the school year, particularly with the students with the health and safety requirements. The two biggest ones are the spacing and the masks. They're getting some reminders, and I think your principals will reemphasize that, but they're really doing an excellent job trying to abide by them and keeping themselves safe. One of the unfortunate pieces is, as we've moved forward, there have not been any changes in the health and safety requirements. But one thing that I can tell you, the symptom screening, the pre-symptom screening checklist, we received a document today that's changed that a little bit, and we'll be getting information out over the next couple of days on that. When you look at that symptom screening checklist that we're requiring all of our students and staff to do, actually parents do it with their kids, the list of secondary symptoms or less common symptoms of COVID, they've taken a few off from that. So I think that's a positive piece. And our school nurses are doing an excellent job, by the way, dealing with that at the school level. But people are doing a great job. The other piece I want to say before the principals come up is we talked about enrollment earlier, but also recall you to think back to when you approved the return to school plan in August. One of the things we talked about were families who were selecting remote only were asked to make a commitment for the first ranking period. That's the first quarter at EHS, EEMS, and the first trimester, first ranking period is a quarter at EHS and Hctc, and a trimester at EEMS. What we've been talking about is having the principals, and they'll talk about this a little bit too, contacting families who selected remote only and kind of get a feel for what their intentions are. So Mrs. Bowles, Mr. Clifford, contacting families with regard to the end of the first ranking period at the Ellsworth High School, which is the first week in November, correct?
November 6th.
November 6th, thank you. That is the first week, right? Okay, good. And Mrs. Clifford, Ms. Gabinelli, to contact families, even though it's the first week in December. Which date is it? Someone's going to give me a date.
4th, ends on the 4th.
December 4th. So the Cliffords have the actual dates. That's a good thing. To talk about that. So with the enrollment that we have in our schools, we can accommodate remote families coming back. We have approximately 85 remote-only students at K through 4, around 80 5 through 8, and it's around 80, I believe, at EHS. So we could accommodate them back in the maroon and gray piece. So that's step one of where we're going now, is looking how can we determine if some of those families are going to have their children come back. And I know the principals have already had a few families reaching out to them. They recognize that they've made a commitment. But there's going to be kind of a step 2 to this. If all of them want to come back and the spacing doesn't permit it, there may need to be a criteria that has to be used to determine who can come back. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. I suspect there will be some that want to bring their students back. There will be some that are comfortable where they are. If we get to a situation where we take the remote-only students back and we still have space, we're starting to talk about, are there ways we can look at developing a criteria? Because we still have families who would like to have their children in school 5 days a week. That's going to be a bigger challenge because we can't accommodate everybody, so there would have to be a criteria. But that's kind of a secondary step. So right now, we're looking at remote only, getting information from those families and finding out if we can bring some students back. One piece that we didn't think about when we were putting the plan together, let's just say that we have a family who has children that are both at Ellsworth High School and at EEMS. Even though at EEMS, we're looking at December 4th as the date. If you have a family at the high school who wants to bring their children back, and they have siblings at EEMS, to me it would make sense to allow the siblings to come also. I think that's easier for the family, so that way you don't have one child in full remote and one child in hybrid. I don't know that that's something that has to be voted on, But to me, I think that's something that would make a lot of sense for our families. So, to me, I think that's a positive. The other piece that we'll be looking at is kind of a secondary piece is, are there places across the grade span where our numbers would support bringing students back outside of the remote-only piece? You know, Mrs. Clifford and I have talked a little bit about kindergarten, although it's really close, and Mrs. Bowles and I have been talking about Hctc. You have the live work component at Hctc, but you also have space there where you may be able to accommodate enough students where you could bring more students back. But I think that's a positive piece. It's consistent with the plan, so principals have been working with the remote onlys. But just so we let you guys as a board know and let the community know, we're looking at the other aspects too. So with that being said, I would love to turn it over to our principals to talk a little bit about the instructional pieces. And I think some of the questions were, what's it look like in person, hybrid, remote, and the equity pieces? So who would like to go first? They're all jumping, look at them.
I'll go. So at the middle school, the instruction looks a little bit varied, between grade levels a little bit, simply because of some of the technology that isn't quite in place yet. We're still working on getting the polycoms up and running in every grade level. We've had some wiring issues, and we had to order some parts to make sure that those could be connected appropriately and that they worked. We've also run into, unbeknownst to us until we get the machines going, but the way that the projectors are in some rooms, there's quite a bit of a glare on the whiteboard, which then does not allow students who are on the Polycom to see the whiteboard effectively. So while some teachers are utilizing the Polycoms right now to teach synchronously, other teachers are still recording lessons and uploading those to Google Classroom for fully remote students and some students on their remote days. I will say that I think this is getting better, but in the beginning we had some trouble engaging students in their remote days because given the fact that they had been out of school for so long, they were considering the remote days at home still like a vacation day or a day off from school versus in person. So that has gotten much better as we move through, as we've had extracurricular up and running, and as we get into further into the trimester. I will say that one of the challenges still is teachers teaching in-person hybrid students and fully remote students. I think that still is a big challenge for us that we're working through. With the help of the Polycoms, it's been better. We've also been able to provide a couple of grade levels with an additional support to try to create more time during the day via ed techs or substitutes that we have in the building. Whomever's free, we try to just make a rotation to get more time for teachers to be able to connect with fully remote students as well during the day. Teachers are still holding their office hours to connect with those fully remote students and build those relationships. I'm just going to look at my notes. We're utilizing study halls and Rti Time. I will say I think that teachers and probably students and parents alike are finding that the small class sizes are being very beneficial to students. They're getting that individualized attention for students. For example, in 8th grade, we had students were working on a project. It was a colonial sales booth. So they're thinking as colonists and trying to sell a product or something, and they've created these commercials and these sales booths that you would see in colonial times. And we had a student in 8th grade who was very apprehensive and normally would have been apprehensive and didn't think he could do his jingle for his advertisement. And I'm in 8th grade the other day, and he rapped the whole jingle and created this wonderful jingle that was amazing. Another 8th grade student did a video recording commercial and recruited her little sisters to make this wonderful commercial. And so the quality of work that we're seeing as well and of the product is awesome. So kids are really engaging in those types of things. And like we said before, we're being innovative about how we're doing these things and what we're asking of students and families. And I think in terms of, I've been in contact with many remote parents. I started in 5th grade last week, and many of them are ready to bring their kids back if there is room. And not because they're unhappy with the instruction. They say it's going very well. but because of the social emotional piece for middle school that is so important. So I think that's where we're still lagging a little bit, and we're trying to work those pieces out for kids. But especially the fully remote students, I think they're feeling, not that they're missing out in instruction, but they're missing out on those social opportunities to really build upon. So we're working on some of that as well through our advisory. And I think, any questions, Jen?
Always, right? So with the polycoms, I know you had mentioned there's been a little struggle for teachers, just time,
Yep.
right? So they're teaching in person, they're getting plans set for the next remote day and the fully remote.
Yes.
With those polycoms, would you expect that each teacher could be teaching synchronously so that it would seem like it would lessen the burden? So if they
Yes.
were teaching on Monday and that group was in person, then the group that's at home is learning the same exact thing, it would almost seem like the flow of the lessons would be very similar to pre-COVID.
Yes.
So that you wouldn't be.
Right, yes. So what we've done in terms of teams, we've talked in teams about making sure that your fully remote students are grouped with a cohort group. So even though they're not in person, we're grouping them almost with a cohort group, so gray or maroon. And on those days, they're following that curriculum, the same curriculum. So they're getting the same things that those kids would get in person and the same things that they would get. And it does lessen that burden in terms of planning. I think when you talk about managing people in person and managing on a screen, those are things we're still working on. It's a little bit challenging for middle school students, especially the fully remote kids, because they are so anxious. Like, the social emotional piece is really huge, and they just want to chat, or they want to, so that piece is a little more challenging, and something that we're working on with kids. And it's taking a little bit, but kids are getting really adept at, okay, this is my class time. I'm here to get the lesson, I'm here to learn, I'm here to participate in the class, and we're going to try to provide times where they can chat with their friends later.
So do you expect that teachers, once you get all these polycoms set up,
Yes.
do you expect that all of them will be utilizing them so that you're more consistent in
Yes.
the equity of the education, I think, is really important. So that student that's, I guess not even just the fully remote, when they're home.
Right.
I know there's different classes that are utilizing, Hctc was a good example today, so that they're, and I understand middle school, it's tough,
Yep.
it's probably a little bit different developmentally.
Yes.
But I was just curious to see what the teachers think about those polycoms. Like, is everybody on board? Is it gonna take
So I
some
think we're
time?
still getting there. We haven't been able to utilize them enough, and like I said, we ran into some challenges in certain classrooms where, I have a grade level that isn't even set up yet. Just because of the way the rooms need to be wired. Ran into some other challenges with the way the projectors are and the glare off the whiteboard. So we're kind of working out the kinks still. So I do anticipate that. The other challenge that we're running into a little bit for kids is that a lot of our students are either home alone by themselves during the day, or remote or fully remote, or they're at the Y. So that's a little bit challenging too when you're doing different things and you're trying to log on and you have different times going on, especially if the schedule changes and you think, your plans change a little bit based on how the instruction goes with those kids each day. You have a plan for the week, but you teach the kids that are in front of you. So if they need more help with a certain concept, you're not going to just move on to the next lesson. You're going to continue on with that lesson and come up with a different activity to help them learn that concept. So sometimes plans change. So I think that those are things that teachers are running into as well, and the schedule changes, and that's hard for our kiddos who are home by themselves, as much as we try to communicate. So those are just a few challenges, but overall the feedback that I'm getting from parents is that especially for fully remote, the parents that I've talked to in the last week say it's going really well. But their child is missing out on that social emotional. So I think the polycoms will help once we can work out the kinks. And it will create more of that equity. But I don't know that at this point fully remote students are losing out that much, because I do know that teachers are recording their lessons and uploading them. So they're getting as teachers are teaching in the classroom, they're recording that lesson and uploading it, so the kids are still getting the lesson, even if it's not live.
So that's good to know. So the teachers aren't teaching and then later having to sit down and record a lesson.
They're doing
on
both.
their own time.
They're doing both.
They're doing both.
Yeah, they're doing both, but that's a personal preference, I think, in some ways too, for teachers. What they feel they can manage at the time. So there is time taken, like their time after school, and that's part of the 4 hours that we're paying them. And what you heard Rachel talk about is time to do those things as well, time to plan and record some lessons if they can't record it during class. But we have a lot, I would say probably half of our teachers teaching synchronously right now, even without the polycoms.
I don't want to does anybody else have any questions? No. I just have one more.
Sure.
So how are we handling the equity on time? So if you have a student in 5th grade, on their remote day, they might have an hour's worth of work to do.
Yep.
Because they're not synchronous all the time.
Yep.
But then somebody in 7th or 8th grade might be completing their work in, half an hour. So how are we keeping, I think that's a big question out there, is how are we keeping it so that it's as similar to pre-COVID as possible, right? So that we're not seeing these students be half-time behind. So they've got their 2 days or 2.5 days of instruction, basically, if they're here the Friday.
I think one thing first, when you talk about students being behind, right now everybody
Not behind,
has,
but I wanna
everybody's
clarify.
coming at the
Yeah.
same point, right? Because we're not, all the students are there. Like people
Correct.
are like, oh, there's
Right.
slid there. No, like they're coming at the same point. So we're gonna meet them where they are,
Right.
and we're gonna move them forward. In terms of the equity of time, I'm more concerned, and something that we've been focusing on is more about the equity of the meaningful learning. So some students, and this is like how it is in the classroom too, some students will be able to move forward quickly and you continue to enrich them. Some students it'll take more time. So I think when you're talking about does the student finish in an hour versus half an hour, I think that's more based on the student than it is about the work.
Actually, that's not what I was meaning.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's fine. Yes, and I agree with that.
Okay.
What I meant was the equity in that assigned work. So, if you have, I heard it a lot in the spring. It was one of the things we heard a lot, especially on our survey. If you had a couple of students who were in the same family, and you had teachers that assigned work at a normal workload, and teachers who was for even their remote days considered now.
I see what you're hearing. Yeah,
And
I understand what you're
then
saying.
teachers who assigned a lot less. Where are we at working with that?
So I think that we are very consistent across grade level, and I think grade levels vary on what the ability, what the developmental level is. So in terms of like fifth grade is consistent, and they're providing the same amount is what you're talking about, right? The
Correct.
same, not necessarily
By every
time,
teacher, right.
but the
Right.
same amount of work for all students. And it's the same in 6th, same in 7th, same in 8th. So they're collaborating, and they're working together, and they're planning to make sure that they're consistent across grade level. That's not something, I know that we heard it loud and clear in the feedback in March. It's not something that I've heard from parents. I've heard more the time issue is my kid is finishing this, my child's finishing this. So we need to take a look at that. When I get that feedback, I go to teachers and I say, hey, we have to take a look at what is the work we're providing? Is it meaningful? Are students feeling adequately challenged? Is it connected to the lessons? Things like that. So we evaluate that and reflect all the time. But I'm not getting a lot of that feedback.
Okay.
right now. So in terms of equity and what the amounts that are being assigned are very consistent, I believe, and haven't heard differently.
Okay, good.
So I think we're good in that realm. It's just more about continuing to engage the fully remote students in the social emotional pieces.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm going to continue to make phone calls in the next week or so to all the other grade levels. I started with 5th, and I'm going to move to 6th because they have the most fully remote learners. So those numbers are really critical to me in planning for the future. But that's my jumping off point, and we'll go from there. So, you know, I may come back next month, not next week, sorry, and, you know, tell you I got different feedback. But at this point, that's kind of what I'm going with. Super.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Erica.
Before another administrator speaks, I have to have consensus of the board. We've gone over our 2-hour limit. May we extend tonight?
Yes.
All those agree? Thank you. And Erica, I'm very happy you did not hit your head.
Was I bouncing?
You were very close.
Oh. The TV. I'm Italian, I talk with my hands.
Yeah.
I can't help it.
Anyone else?
Clifford always looking out for me. So at Hancock County Technical Center, like I talked about earlier, we have gone 100% synchronous. So every day, our AM students Zoom in at 8:30 and in the afternoon at 11:45. In looking at time, what's happening is students are typically Zooming in the different programs anywhere from 30 to 75 minutes. And during that time, they're doing their direct instruction. At times, they're dismissed for the remainder of the period to work on independent work. Other times, they're asked to take a break, but circle back and come back about 15 to 20 minutes before the period ends. So they may go work on independent work and then do a check-in at the end of the period. So that's how we're kind of handling it. We don't have the Polycom systems yet. IT did a walkthrough of our building. Our building is old. We had a lot of concerns about number of ports, accessibility in every program, and how that was going to look. And we definitely noticed some funky areas where it may be an issue. But in the meantime, speaking of staff innovation, before school ever started, Jamie Anderson took all of his monitors that we had upgraded, and our classrooms were set up with the monitors, so staff has their laptop, a monitor, their smart boards, and they're making it work. So they've been really, really good about that. So no matter what day it is, whether you're 100% remote, you're hybrid, or you're in person, you're getting the same instruction. So that, I think, has been a strength. It's allowed for direct instruction to continue no matter the day or no matter what cohort you're in. Challenges for Hctc staff have definitely been, first and foremost, 5 cohorts. So for us, we have our maroon, our gray, our 100% remote, but then we have 2 additional cohorts from Sumner High School. So we have a Monday, Tuesday group from Sumner and a Thursday, Friday group. Those kids cross through our maroon and gray cohorts. So what happens for my staff, which was why synchronous was so essential, is for instructional purposes, synchronous was the only way to do it. So all kids got the instruction they needed. What is becoming increasingly difficult is setting up their live workstations. Because you're going to set up a station on Monday for kids to do their live work component. Those Monday cohort kids are going to do it. And then on Tuesday, your gray cohort comes in to do it, but your second day of your Sumner cohort is coming in to do it. So they have to set up so many different stations for the different cohorts. And then when those Sumner cohort kids leave on Tuesday, we don't get them again until the following Monday. So if they don't finish their live work in those 2 days, it sits unfinished. Same thing for our maroon gray kids. You set up a live work project or a learning activity on a Monday, biomedical experiment, a media project, an auto lift, any of those things, it then sits and you have to have a separate setup for your gray cohort. So live work is becoming increasingly challenging, not just in completion of hours, but in teacher prep and organization and trying to figure out all the different scenarios for all 5 kids. That's the hardest part for our 100% remote learners, is the setup for live work you can't replicate that. I have been calling our families. I only have 16 remote kids. So far, those that I've talked to want to come back because their kids are like, oh, we missed the live work. We need to go get our hands dirty. I have a couple that will stay 100% remote, but they're in programs where the live work isn't tied to certification and they have family medical issues. So I think some will stay remote, but I think we're going to find the majority can come back and we can accommodate them. So we'll be in good shape being able to take those remote kids back. I think the other big thing that we talked about earlier is the other biggest challenge is September for our year 1 kids is always exciting. It's a new school. They're learning the ropes. They're figuring it out. Well, now it's October and we're tired of this stuff. We want to do our craft, our trade. And when can we do it more and how can we do it more? So I think that's starting to become more of an issue for kids, is they're kind of like, we signed up to do something and we feel like we're not. Is this ever going to change? So I think that's probably something I know teachers are working with right now and struggling with, is engagement of kids. They don't want to be on Zoom and they want to start doing their craft and their trade and they're worrying about that. But for me, it's going well. Staff have done a great job following health and safety guidelines. We have set structures in place. Like Mr. Higgins said earlier, our school's very different in terms of we have larger spaces. So for us, it is a little bit different. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
I have a couple. You had mentioned earlier the internships.
Yes.
And how you were trying to work around all of that. So what are some of the ways or challenges, I guess? Like, how are you going to work that out?
So we have a lot of businesses reaching out, asking if students can start. One of the things that Mr. Higgins and I have talked about is, kids are working now. So the issue is, will the business allow our student to follow health and safety guidelines? Will they partner with us? Because we have an obligation to still meet the guidelines, even though the business may have different guidelines. And so really what we're going to have to do is individually work with each business to make sure we're both on the same page about how we're going to handle these students. Because our hope is to start getting kids out soon. It's that time of year.
Right.
So that'll be the biggest thing, is just really educating the business community and getting agreements that this is what we have to do. Yep.
And then, so when you're talking about the kids itching to do live work and needing to do their live work, I would expect that a lot of the second-year students are in the position where if they don't get those hours in, then are you seeing any kind of drop in interest or not wanting to stay enrolled because if they can't get those hours, are they changing their minds?
Yeah, an instructor actually came to me today and said, I have 3 kids who are talking about dropping and wondering, should we get our academic, could we get more out of academic credits at this point? That's definitely a concern. And what I've tried to say to students and families is we don't typically start our live work public kind of stuff until October anyway. So we're really not that far behind. I think it's more the apprehension. Are we going to be able to? Is it coming? I think it's more that unknown that's increasing anxiety of kids, families, and my staff. It is, are we going to be able to? Because it was very clear again on Friday, the requirements are the requirements and these certifications are not changing them. So that hopefully will come. But it is hard, because if you only have kids in cohorts those 2 days, and you set up these projects, they're only gonna get so many hours when they're there. So that's hard.
Do you have an idea of when you would need to get those kids back in the school more days a week so that they can complete by the end of the year? Like, what would that look like? What would that time frame be?
I would say sooner rather than later, but I would say we'd be starting to push it if we didn't look to do something November, December. That would be my guess, looking at it.
So we had talked earlier about HCTC having a bit different spacing issue. Hypothetically, could we bring back our students by November 1st and space them correctly and keep them safe?
So in all of our programs except 4, I could bring kids back at a more full-time level. The challenge is going to be, in talking to high school principals, what does that mean for kids the other half of the day? So when I met with high school principals and I said, hypothetically, what would happen if? They are all absolutely in support of kids coming to HCTC 4 or 5 days a week, whatever I end up, however I make it work to meet the health and safety guidelines. The question then becomes, and the work becomes, okay, this may happen. So now, Bucksport High School, you have X number of kids that come in the morning. If I now have them come 5 or 4 days a week, when they get back to you at 10:30, they're still on a hybrid schedule. What does that look like?
Where do they go? Or
Where do they go?
Okay.
What does that mean? And so what I've done is reached out to other CTEs who have gone back 4 or 5 days a week, but all their high schools are hybrid, and said, what are all the different options? What's happening in the other schools? And I have a menu of what high schools are doing, so that high schools can start having those conversations to figure that out. In some cases, kids drive anyway. They'll simply drive themselves home.
Right.
And
And
then would they hop on their class that might be at
And
their
then they
school?
Zoom, just like they normally would anyway, because some kids are already coming to me and remote at their high school. So those kids would continue to do that. In some towns, buses are taking kids home,
Right.
depending on the size and the bus availability. We're a lot more spread out. That would be very difficult
And
for
that's-
us.
That's another piece that has to be factored into it when you're looking at buses, because when you seat them, when you saw the video that Donnie Saunders did earlier in the year, in essence, you can have, if they're not siblings, 21 students on a bus. As you bring more back, well, right now, we're very lucky here in Ellsworth, we're doing 1 bus run,
Yeah.
morning and afternoon.
Right.
You start adding to that, are you putting yourself in a position where you have to do multiple bus runs, and then what does that do to the schedule on the
To
other
all,
side? So
right.
that's another delicate piece to this.
Right.
Yeah, and then in other schools, they have a space they've designated for their CTE students. And if they're, a maroon day student, on their gray days, they go to that designated space and still Zoom for all their
Just do their
classes. And they stay at the school until the end of the day. But like Mr. Higgins said, what that means is if we're gonna move in that direction, it's gonna take us a little bit of time. So I'm trying to do some of that work behind the scenes to look at how many kids drive, how many don't drive, those that don't drive, which high school do they go to, and what does that mean for numbers for transportation? Because it will be different for every high school.
Right.
Some high schools will very easily be able to absorb kids coming back to me 4 or 5 days a week. Other high schools will not, because their numbers are larger. So it's gonna really be, every high school is gonna have to look at it with me and work with me. And for the 4 programs, we can't fit kids back 5 days a week. We'll have to hand schedule them and try to get them from 2 days to 3 or 4 days. That's the plan, anyway. To try to maximize their time.
I just feel like this is a perfect litmus test. We can start here. We've done fall sports and we have been very successful. We have not had an outbreak amongst that, and I've kept very close tabs on who do our kids interact with. All of our schools around here, we're not seeing these big increases. Knock on wood,
Yeah, you've got it up
But
there.
Maine, we are like the champions of social distancing. Like
Yeah.
we've got we're doing really well, but that's going so well. Now we have this, and this is time is of the essence, part here where certifications are at stake. let's try to move forward as a district. Let's try and get these in as quickly as possible. This could be a great way to say, okay, we're going to start with these kids back 5 days and, look, keep our numbers down. We can keep moving forward.
The other thing you've got going for you at Hctc is, by the nature of the separate programs, you can still maintain staying below that 50-person gathering.
Right.
So when you're
Yes.
changing your programs at Hctc, the way they've got it structured, you never have 50 kids in the hallway.
Right.
Yeah.
Go to EEMS,
Right.
EHS, EES, you don't have that same piece. So, but Mrs. Bowles is working on how that may work. So remote-only kids first, you heard me mention a little bit earlier. Kindergarten's a place we're looking at, HCTC is another place,
Right,
and it's
right.
compounded by the live work piece.
Right.
But it
it's
may
a
be an
great-
opportunity, Abby, you're right.
It'll be a great test to say, okay, we can do this and we can make it, and we can work and we can stay safe.
Yeah.
We can really make
Yeah,
the stuff work out.
and like Dan mentioned, I'm lucky because of the way the building is and the way the programs are set up.
Right.
Kids come and go and exit from their own program. They're not in the hallways, they stay there, we're not doing school-wide assemblies. So
Right.
when they go to biomedical, they're there for 2 hours with the exception of when they go outside for their 10-minute mask break. So they are very much sequestered in their little program area.
And Amy, do you have the space too? Like you mentioned the option to possibly have those kids stay and do their Zooming or their remote learning. Is that available in this?
I wish I had that available at my school because I've thought of that to try to help Ellsworth. The
yeah.
problem is, right now, the carpentry space is my largest space, but it's where my academics is being housed.
Okay.
And so if we brought the academic kids back 4 or 5 days a week, I don't have a space. The space I only would have would be the cafeteria, and right now that's where Bill is using for his classroom
Spreading data, right.
to
Okay.
keep them 3 to 6 feet apart.
Okay.
So that's, unfortunately, I don't.
There's so many different dynamics and variables to this.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks,
Thank
Amy.
you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
So I'll piggyback off of Amy because her school's similar to ours. So we have 7 48-minute periods a day. And the expectation is if you are hybrid or remote only, then you zoom in to 7 periods a day. And so that it's synchronous throughout the day. So a teacher will have, it could be up to 12 kids in front of them. And then they could have, not 10, probably 6 or 7 students on their screen, and that's who they're teaching to. And we don't have the Polycom units in yet. They're doing the middle school and elementary first, then we'll get them so they're zooming onto our teacher's screen on their computer, and then the teachers are having it usually on their desk or in front of them so that they can see all the kids and the kids that they have in front of them. Things that are working really well, just that small number that are in front of you, teachers are loving that, get to really know the students and spend some one-on-one time with them. That's worked well. The kids attending when they're remote and hybrid, that's worked well. The things, the challenges we've been really concentrating on are just the engagement of the hybrid kids and the remote kids. So just like we saw last spring, and I think all of us do it too, sometimes when you're on a screen, you're just there and you're not interacting with anybody, you're not answering questions, and that's what our teachers are running into. The kids are there, but they're really not getting much out of them as far as class participation. We're hoping the cameras will help with that. And sometimes with the remote kids, the work output, isn't there right now, and we're just trying to figure out ways that we can do that. But those are the 2 big challenges, and like I talked before, my report, the Rti Time, we're trying to figure that out right now. But the everyday protocols of the building have worked better than expected. The kids have been terrific about the masks. They have to be reminded about the distancing, but they're respectful of that. They've been incredible. They really have. They're all the kids that want to be there. As far as your remote kids coming back on November 9th, I've only had 2 families so far. I stay in contact with the junior and seniors, Mrs. Wright, the sophomores, and Mr. Frost, the freshman. And so we'll have more of a number, in the next few weeks as to who want to come back. Students that are struggling, that's who I'm calling right now, and that's who they're calling right now. And I think some of those students would do better in person. So kind of talking to families and talking to students about hopefully coming back, on the 9th so that we have more kids. But we also have to balance it because we do have quite a few classes that have to go outside their classroom because they're too big right now. So most of our classrooms can take 8 or 9 kids. Science, I think it's 12. And then, so we set up the AP room. There's a class in there almost every period. And then we set up the library where we have 14 desks in there. And that is used, 3 or 4 periods every single day, whether it's a gray day or a maroon day. So if we bring, some back, that means we bring kids back, that means more are going to be outside of their classroom. We have to find space for them. So it's kind of tricky. Like, I would love our kids to go to Hctc, but the second half of the day, I don't know what we would do with them. We really can't. We can't take too many more. We can take some, but we really can't take too many more, or else all of our classes will be outside of the classroom. We did make use of outdoor classrooms when the weather was nice, and we had 12 to 14 spots outside at 6 feet apart, and those worked well. And we'll continue that, when the weather is nice. You say something?
One of the challenges that you have that, Amy doesn't have at Hctc, when your kids change classes, you take the 3rd floor south wing that's got 8 or 9 classrooms in it, you put 7, 8 kids in each of those classrooms. When they change classes, you're looking at that hallway with staff there, you're talking around 50 kids. But those kids aren't all going to the next location in the same place. They're going to go to, some are going to go to the 2nd floor south wing, some are going to go to the east wing. So that's a big challenge in maintaining that 50-person limit in the schools.
Yeah, when we release, so we have 6 minutes now in between class periods. We usually have 4 because the teachers have to wash the desk down. And so, like if it's a period 1, that's an odd period. So we'll go odd numbered rooms first. So when the bell rings, the odd numbers go. And then a minute later, you'll hear a second bell, and that's when the even rooms go. We were doing it at 30 seconds, but it was too soon. So a lot of kids weren't out of the hallway yet. So a minute at a time that's worked pretty well. We do the same thing when we dismiss at the end of the day. It's by even room, odd room, outlining schools, Ellsworth schools, drivers, kids getting picked up. So yeah, it's a system that we've created that's worked pretty well, but it took a week or so for it to kind of pan out.
And it is working well, but that's one of those instances when you look at your operational considerations, you can't maintain 6 feet in those hallways. So that's where the 3-foot piece is happening, is during those passing times in the morning, changing classes. But even so, you're dealing with that 50-person limit. Yeah, you guys, you and your staff have done a great job setting that system up.
And the other success, I think, has been the technology. The Google Classroom has worked really well for the students and the teachers. Most of them, you don't get an invite through your email to every single class. It's usually in the Google Classroom. So if I have English in the morning, first period, I'll just go to my English Google Classroom, the link will be there, and my Zoom will be there. And then period 2, let's say it's science, same exact thing. I just go to my teacher's Google Classroom, the link is there. So you don't keep getting emails back and forth. That's what we didn't want to have happen. You'd be getting 7 emails a day, just Zoom links. So that's kind of, the Google Classroom's been terrific for us. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
So about how many of your classes are doing synchronous then? The whole school, everybody's teaching synchronously?
Yeah.
And how's the attendance been for those classes, the kids that need to Zoom in?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we have 100% of every single class, but it's good. It's good. We don't have a lot of kids skipping a lot of classes. I thought we'd have a lot more, to be honest with you. The kids that are remote only, that are struggling academically, attendance is an issue. But also, those are kids that were in school last year and attendance was an issue. So we haven't had any new problems to solve, you know, for sure. But yeah, the majority, they're making their classes every single day.
And then, when talking about, you know, the space, in consideration obviously with HCTC students, or as we maybe approach the ability to add in some of those remote students, do you have spaces in the school that are utilized for something else now that maybe, that are typically utilized for a program that isn't happening right now, that could be used for learners? Like, I know there used to be like the big shop area, and we don't have shop anymore. Is
Yeah,
that?
tho- Those spaces all have different programs in them.
Yeah.
You know, what some of
That
your
are
smaller,
currently meeting?
what some of your smaller schools have done, and I would not advocate this, you know, they've suspended physical education program and used their gym to do those pieces, but you know, when you're looking at the social, emotional, physical well-being of our kids, you couldn't advocate that. I think to answer your question, Jen, I'll defer to Dan, but I think the way they're using their spaces there, and I don't think the library or the all-purpose room were intended to be places for classrooms. It's become out of necessity.
Yeah.
You guys are probably fairly limited on what available spaces you have.
Yeah, we really don't.
There really is nothing.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is some periods the auditorium's available. We haven't dipped into the auditorium yet. It's used most of the day for classes in there, but there are a few where we could go there. But yeah, like Dan said, the AP room, you know, in library we turned into a classroom 2 weeks into the school year because we needed it. And the AP room, kind of the same thing. We set it up to eat lunch, and then we realized, wow, all these classrooms need bigger spaces, so that's why we went to the AP room.
So in a space like that, Dan, I mean, when I was in high school, of course, we were going through an asbestos problem, but we had so it wasn't ideal. But we had the portable classrooms. If we were talking about just the small amount of students that we might need to find space to learn, to accommodate the live work at HCTC, and we don't have the room for them, or possibly not for the amount that remote
Portable
learners.
classrooms, I don't think you'd find space on that footprint up there for that.
At the high school?
And the other thing is with the
interesting.
portable classroom, I taught in a portable classroom
Oh, I
one
did too.
year, and they were smaller than
understand.
a regular. I mean,
Right.
when you think of 6 feet apart, you probably couldn't get any more than 6 kids in one of those rooms.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of
Yeah.
the students from HCTC. It might not be in large numbers
Right.
per se, but 2 or 3 portable classrooms, would that work? You know, that was
If you
my
could
concern.
find them, the other challenge is, we did look at, would that be something that's feasible earlier in the year? But when you look at Chuck's staff and cleaning, you know, we're still short 1 custodian. That would be additional square footage that they would have to clean and disinfect on a daily basis, which would make it a challenge. But I really think, looking at the high school property, I'm trying to think of where you would put them, in all honesty. You know, back when the high school was over at EMS, and I know what you're talking about, because I taught in those classrooms too. We probably had 32 there, but that was back when that A-wing was being torn down, you had that back parking lot, you had a lot of space there. That doesn't exist anymore. Since you've added a football field, since you've added a different parking lot.
Yeah. The other part is coverage for those classrooms, you know, unless we found, you know, 2 more long-term subs.
Yeah.
That would be the other. I don't really have any, you know, teachers that are available or anything like that.
Or an ed tech or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's-
And ed techs, frankly, we've had struggles finding them too. April's gonna validate that.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Those are all good questions, Jen, but, you know,
Thanks,
they're,
Dan.
those are all good questions. They're just barriers that come up in place of those, unfortunately. So April, then Rachel.
So I kind of structured mine in a little bit different manner. I wanted to talk about kind of challenges, success, and changes in each of the environments. So I kind of want you to go back to your elementary school days as students or your kids, where they came in, they sat on the carpet, they did morning meeting, they did guided reading groups with their teacher, they read individually with their teacher. So the first challenge for all of our teachers at the K-4 level was, how am I going to do that? How am I going to teach reading to kids? How am I going to do my guided reading groups? How am I going to structure my classroom to keep the spacing that I need and be able to move and teach kids? So for me, rethinking how to teach really took a while for teachers. Those first few days we were in, and I'm really blessed that we had that time to grow. They would be like, what are you doing? What does your classroom look like? What are you doing with those 2 dots there? How are you using that? And really that on-site troubleshooting to figure out the mechanics of teaching. I think that was a big challenge starting out the year. We're also struggling with supplies. We spent a lot of the requests, teachers made requests for the grant funding, and our supplies still aren't here. We looked at getting manipulative sets for each kid, getting whiteboards for each kid, getting magnetic letters for each kid. And those supplies they're just not here. It's a supply and demand issue. They're just not here yet. So we are still using a set, using sanitizing time, and then using another set. So a couple of challenges for my in-person instruction for us is the 2 things that I shared. The loss of instructional time due to the cleaning, the manipulatives, your mask breaks, your cleaning, and your sanitizing, that's a concern for our teachers. My teachers, they love to teach. They want to teach the kids when they're there. They want to utilize every minute that they can. And, it is a concern and a challenge for them. They've done some really cool things, like I showed the Bitmoji classroom before. They're doing their read-alouds outside during mask breaks. They're utilizing the outdoor classroom spaces. But that is a piece. In addition, there's a lot of changes in classrooms. They don't look the way that they used to look. So there are markings on the floor for learning spaces. There are dots. There are arrows. There's less teaching stuff. There's less flip charts. There's less center, so that there's more space for kids and there's more space for teaching. So they look a lot different. The physical makeup of classrooms look a lot different. A lot of students have wiggle seats and cushions and bands across the desks because they're in the classroom a long time. So they're in there for lunch, they're in there for academics, they have their mask breaks outside, but their snacks are there. They're really in their classroom spaces a lot, so they do look a lot different. All their belongings are in this space, and bins and buckets and boxes all around them. So the classroom does look different. Successes with this is teachers are utilizing their technology like never before, using guided reading groups using a dot camera, teaching math with your dot camera, really utilizing that visual multimedia investment that the school had when that school was built. They have really stuck to that. It's really made a difference, especially the dot cameras in teaching reading. It's been essential for all the teachers. So that's kind of the piece for what it looks like in person. The hybrid instruction, there are different challenges. Again, we have a supply and demand problem with Chromebooks. So grade 4 has a pot of Chromebooks, but Chromebooks aren't going home for remote days, and that is a huge challenge for our teachers in grade 4. We're working on that. We're hopefully that they're coming at the end of the month, but it is a huge challenge for those grade 4 students and those grade 4 teachers. The other piece is the consistency with the YMCA. We have that collaboration and that partnership, but supporting them and supporting our students and giving them resources and guidelines and support with that, and we're working on that collaboration and working on improving that collaboration with them, but that still is a challenge. the changes that you're seeing, especially from those pieces, you're seeing choice board activities being sent home. So it's like a checkerboard. You can do an activity in this row or do an activity in this column. And they're really choice activities that enhance learning. You're seeing a lot more of those. You're seeing the Bitmoji classrooms like I showcased earlier. You're seeing all kinds of use of different technology programs. Teachers are really reliant on those now, especially programs like Reading A to Z that has our benchmark passages and our level text, as well as eSpark, which has math pre-assessments and aligns activities based on students' strengths and weaknesses. So we're definitely a little bit more reliant on that technology. And that's kind of our challenge for our hybrid pieces. Our remote instruction, which is our remote-only teachers for grades K through 4. We're really having a hard time with attendance. Attendance for our morning meeting, attendance for special services, attendance in special ed, as well as attendance with specialists. We're starting to, a teacher sends a list down. I'm starting to make phone calls. The front office is making phone calls. We're trying to really be active in that pursuit. That's just started. Another thing is Seesaw as a K3 app is a bit overwhelming. When we looked at it before, we utilized it as like an e-portfolio or an enhancement to what we were doing in the classroom. But as a standalone learning platform, its news feed and the number of posts that teachers have to approve is overwhelming to them. And it's overwhelming to parents. And that is something that we're talking about and looking on and working with the company to turn off notifications, to globally approve a post. And we're trying to better utilize that technology. But for utilizing it as a learning platform for online distance learning to the level where our kids are working and our teachers are teaching, it's really overwhelming for parents and for students. We're having a hard time with distraction-free places. We're doing lessons, students are running and cooking lunch and then coming back or eating lunch or not out of bed and not dressed, really trying to focus on, this is school and I know that you're on your iPad, but you're still laying in bed. Let's sit up, let's find a space, let's get a desk. So those are the kind of things that we're working on. And some of that is amazing from parents, but it is a different environment in that piece. And we are in people's homes. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge for our teachers, it's a challenge for our students, and it's a challenge for our parents because we're in their homes. And, so I use Kenny. Kenny doesn't want to get out of bed, but you want her to attend class. She's going to be laying there, and you're going to grab her the iPad so she's in school. But we're really focusing on creating a learning space for teachers at home. And our remote teachers have submitted some requests to Rachel to be able to provide some students with some of those things so that they can have those spaces and set those spaces and have the learning materials that they need. And this is a new one for me, but our remote teachers are feeling isolated. We have 2 remote teachers that teach on site, and then we have 2 remote teachers that aren't able to be on site, or 3 remote teachers not able to be on site, and that's hard. They're feeling isolated from their colleagues. They're feeling a little isolated from staff and that piece. And that's something that we're really working on. And it's hard. It's really hard. They make connections as a remote team, and they're also connecting to the grade level teams. But you're still kind of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And that's something that we're navigating those relationships and really working on trying to find ways so that they don't have that feeling. And one of the successes of remote learning is grade 4 is rocking it. They've had 100% attendance, and if someone's not there, there's been a communication with the teacher. And we're talking about, as well as special services, and they have better attendance in specialist classes than other grade levels, but grade 4 is just doing a phenomenal job with that piece. Been really happy with that. They celebrate their successes a lot, but they've done really, really well. And a big change that was implemented with remote learning for 3 and 4 was that the Zooms were open all day, so students pop in and out all day. So if you do a global math lesson, you're working with a small group, and then kids either have a brain break or they have independent time, the Zoom's open, and kids are able to pop in and out, and parents are able to pop in and out with questions as needed. And that's made a huge impact at 3 and 4 with getting, you're working on something, you want an immediate answer, you know what I mean? And so they're logging in and doing those pieces. But that's kind of a little bit of an overview. One of the things that I think is an overall challenge at K4 is, and I think it's global, K-12, is that every staff member in the building, ed techs, teachers, front office staff, everyone is working really, really hard. And that's a positive thing because, we're a great school system, but you also have to weigh that because it's hard and it weighs on them. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that. And we are always looking for ways to support them. And we tried to do a really good job this week with the PTF donating the cards and having the catered lunch and doing those things to let them know that we support them. But that is something that we really have to be cognizant of as a district, and me specifically as the leader of the building, being able to recognize that and being able to find ways to support them. And I think it's important to note, just because of the structure of the health and safety guidelines, the number of duties and the schedule changes for teachers, it's really important to acknowledge that, because before you'd go to lunch duty, you'd have 2 or 3 teachers, and your whole grade level would be there. So if I have 5 teachers per grade level, I have to cover 5 classrooms, okay? And you think about that all the way across the building, everyone in our building has duties. Everyone actually probably has a morning duty, a lunch, a recess duty, and an after-school duty, just because of the numbers in order to keep everyone safe. There are teachers people usually just had 1 duty, maybe 2, but it's changed. And that's kind of the thing I'm talking about with the hard work. I feel very blessed that it's an all hands on deck mentality right now at the K4 level, and everyone is contributing to the best of their ability. But I think it's important to acknowledge where people are at. And I wanted to be open and transparent about that. And there's improvements to be made in the things that we're doing, but I think overall, I think we're doing okay. Kids have been amazing and parents have been amazing. The mask wearing, the questions, support, offers of help have been really amazing from parents, but the teachers are really doing the work and the ed techs are really doing the work. I do want to talk about a couple of things that are different from me. My classrooms are a little bit bigger. If you have a bathroom in your classroom, you can fit usually 10 or 11. The max, I think, is usually 11 in our classrooms, including a teacher. One of the things that's important to note is anytime that you have a classroom with a teacher, you have also students who access adult support or one-on-one support. That spacing is very limited. We talked about looking at kindergarten, and I wanted to be very frank with that. I met with a kindergarten team, and as we started to look at things and discuss options, when you start to count how many are there and the spacing and then adding the table and adding the adult support, we in actuality really don't have the space to bring everyone back. And it's just the physical space. I know that that's hard to hear, but it's an actuality of what we went in and when we did the ideas, because I thought, I'm bringing it back. I was pushing really hard for a while to do that, and so were the teachers. But then we sat to plan and started going through classrooms and talking about students who had adult support. There was 2 in this classroom, 1 in this classroom. That makes 13. We don't have the space. So that's something I wanted to be open and transparent about, that we're looking at doing those things, and there's other steps to the plan that we have talked about, but I wanted to be clear with that. The other issue is I have staffing problems. I need ed techs. We have every maroon day is hard. We are utilizing the staff. I am hogging the subs. not sharing. We are really working to cover student needs. We've talked about alternative staff recruitment ideas. You saw in my board report everyone that I needed with regard to that. So it's a great place to be, and it's a great place to work, and it is a hard job, but it is so worth it. It really is. And if we were to come back, let's just say we got different guidance from the state and they said, come back. We couldn't bring back all of our students. I don't have enough support for them, especially in our life skills program at K4. We would not be able to function right now and run that program unless we were hybrid. I'm very blessed that we have experienced staff in that program and that is able to manage that. But staffing right now at the K4 level is an issue. It's something that we've been researching and looking at doing alternative things. I think you're going to see a video with Msba and I trying to recruit some educational technicians. But I'm going to be honest, that's a very big concern for my staff, for the teachers, for students, for parents. I know I talked a while, I'm sorry.
No.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I'm just thinking, since we have you up here and people are listening, and obviously you need staff, could you maybe go over real quickly for the public to hear, like, what are the requirements you need to apply to be an ed tech or to apply to be a long-term sub?
So we're looking for long-term subs. We do like to have a teaching degree or a 4-year degree just because you're fully responsible for that class. So we are looking for long-term subs for remote teacher grade 1, a long-term sub for elementary music, and I'm looking for an elementary art teacher as well. For an educational technician, we ask that you have 3 years of college. As a part of that, that's so that you can operate independently with the supervision of a special ed teacher, and that job's the best. It really is. You get to work with students either one-on-one or in small groups. You get to help them become better readers. You get to work on reinforcing math skills. You get to help them be successful in classes with redirection, prompting, behavior plans, all those things. It is an amazing place to work. And it's a great thing to have. It's a great gift to be able to watch kids shine. And our educational technician support staff is amazing. We have an experienced crew that's there, but we definitely need some support.
They're very good, but to go along with what April's saying, the level 3 requires 3 years of college, and they can work the most independently. Level 2 requires 2 years of college. They can't work as independently, and level 1's 1 year. But if people are interested, contact the office, 664-7100, or taustin@ellsworthschools.org. Ask for an application.
And have your fingerprints taken.
Also, what about for not a long-term sub, but a regular sub? Do you need regular subs as well?
We do.
Send in an
Yeah.
contact either one of those,
Yes.
phone number or email.
But what are the
6
requirements?
Fill out
For
an
just a
application,
sub?
high school diploma.
Okay, so.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
And fingerprinting. for
Either
subs.
one of those contact information, and
Right.
we can get an application turned around.
Right, okay.
Very much so, thank you.
Good for them to hear.
I have a question for you, April. You were
Sure.
mentioning the manipulatives and how hard that's been, just supply and demand. Everybody
Yep,
needs extra
unfortunately.
staff. Is there any way for you to kind of give us an idea, and you don't have to do it right now, of kind of like your wish list of the things you need in case there's businesses or anybody out there that might be able to acquire sets of things for you and get them to the school? Would that be
I know
helpful?
all the teachers have submitted all those types of requests to
Rachel.
Rachel as part
Yeah.
of the grant process.
Mhm.
I'm CC'd in all of those, so I do have an idea. It's just really hard because they're just not there.
Mhm.
That's part of
They've all
the
been ordered.
issue, huh?
They've all been ordered.
Yeah,
I mean,
just,
it's just the whole
In
world
addition,
wants
in
them
addition
right
to us
now.
ordering them, every other school system in the state of Maine is doing the same thing.
well, nationally as well.
Nationally, yeah.
Yeah.
World,
Mhm.
pandemic.
But it is, I mean, our teachers are making it work, they're sharing pieces, they're rotating kind of lessons. I mean, kindergarten is a great example where one teacher's using this set, and they're doing between the maroon and gray days, they're doing the sanitation piece, and those sets go on to someone else, they're sanitizing them. I mean, they're making it work because it's an all hands on deck, and that's what we do as teachers. But it is, it is hard.
Well, I was glad to hear you recognize the challenges to the teachers, and I know Rachel, sorry, I can't see, 'cause it's true. But Rachel had mentioned that, you know, she had talked to each of the teachers and kind of went down through their needs, so I know we'll hear some of that now, but it's, I understand too, you know, how hard everybody is working, and sometimes that's going, you know, without the breaks and without, you know, the time, and it's difficult right now.
And some of the times they're so unexpected, you know what I mean, when they come, the bright spots, but I am worried about the longevity of that and being able to maintain that and
That pace
and the
and that,
level of
yeah.
work for
Yeah.
staff, yeah.
I agree
And
too.
it's not, it's everyone in the building.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not, it's what makes school work. I mean, I just think that we need to be really cognizant of leaders, being able to support them in other ways, any opportunity that we have.
I agree. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Perfect segue
April.
for Rachel.
Sorry, Rachel.
So it's interesting because I've been paying attention to kind of the community and comments that people have made. And one thing I do want to say is there's a lot of concern for teachers, and a lot of the concern is a lot of people have been saying that they want to hear from teachers, and because they know teachers, and teachers are part of this community, and they're the parents in this community, and they're the children in this community, and I am the daughter of a teacher, and I have been a teacher, and my daughter wants to be a teacher, and most of my friends are teachers, and I do want to say that everyone's working really, really hard, and teachers are tired, and I know that, and so and I take very seriously the fact that when we get a lot of money like this, even though we have a very little bit of time to spend it, that we want to do whatever we can to see if we can do as much as we can with it to help teachers feel successful. And so that was our opportunity. We thought maybe this is the time to go and look teachers in the face and really go talk to them and not just say, you know, what do we think would help, but really ask people what could help, right? And so that was really last week of really trying to, I think I missed maybe 5 teachers because our schedules didn't work. And so, you know, my biggest takeaway is that people are really tired. And that we know that money can't help teachers sleep. Money does not buy sleep, but it might take away some anxiety about paying bills. We know that it can't write remote lesson plans, but it could at least show teachers that we honor their time, and it could buy them more time. Money can't buy them more time with their loved ones, but it might be able to provide them with resources that are better suited to remote instruction. So maybe they don't spend as much time uploading things to, scanning something, because we can get them digital instruction that's already online, right? So we're trying to think of all these different ways that'll save them time to spend more time with their family and their friends. And I just do want to be very cognizant and let the community know that we are very aware of the stress on teachers, because teachers are the backbone of a school system. And that's just so important to all of us. I know that teachers have never chosen this profession because it's easy. Those that do don't tend to stay, and they aren't the ones who create the positive environment. They're the ones who are drawn to the profession and are constantly trying to find ways to make it work, to help students have a better experience, to help colleagues be able to come to work one more day, and they try to help their families get by so they can keep being a teacher. We have to convince our families to get along so that we can keep being teachers, because it's not easy. And so as we thought about this money, I really jumped at the chance, as we discussed what I was supposed to be doing last week, to really sit with teachers and talk to them about how we might be able to help. And part of my meetings with them was, what kind of things do you need? And part of them was asking, what would you like to say to administration. And I want families who I see posting on Facebook and who I see talking to me and saying, do you know how hard this is? Do you know why this is so difficult? Do you know that it's really hard when there's kids on the screen and there's kids in front of us and I feel like I'm not paying enough attention to any of them? And I talk to them here and I see them there, and then I'm not sure if those ones got it, and the ones in front of me are looking at me and I can't pay attention to both of them, and I go to sleep not sure if any of them got it. Do you know that I'm losing sleep about all of them? And that's really hard, because I've been in that situation when I was working with kids who were very stressed in the inner city for different reasons. And so I've felt that, and I understand that feeling. And so it was, some of them said to me, it felt at least good just to say it. And so I would say to people in the community, at the very least, what you can do to help is listen. Because this is a very stressful time for everyone for lots of reasons. And so I hope that at least by listening, it's helpful. And we are continuing to try to listen. Some of the things that I heard were that people do appreciate the 4 extra hours, if not because it's a drop in the bucket for what they do anyway, but it is a nod. As one teacher said, it takes the sting out a little bit, and they wouldn't mind a little bit more sting being taken out. So we both decided that we think that's a good idea. And that more help would be good. And I've seen a lot of families who support their teachers recommend that we get more help. And as April's saying, it's hard to find help. A lot of people have said, why don't you just hire more teachers? But we aren't even able to fulfill the roles that we have advertised. And so we started thinking creatively. And so I would ask the whole community to help us think creatively about how we could do this, because we only have till December 30th with this gigantic amount of money. And I've likened it to all the teachers to that grocery store game where you get a whole bunch of money and you get a grocery cart and you have to run down the aisles and you have 10 minutes to spend like $100,000, and you end up having to pull things off the shelves and hope that you end up with something that you can actually use and eat with your family. Because we have to write this grant by tomorrow and we have to spend it by December 30th. So we want it to be effective. So I've asked all the teachers, we've talked to them about ways that we can spend it, and I've asked them to send me requests, and we have all the requests, and they've asked me for very meaningful things. And some of the ways that we've thought about getting some help are to think about who could help us. Now, we have a lot of people who are wonderful veteran teachers, but feel vulnerable about coming into the schools. And so we certainly don't want to put anyone at risk. And also, some of those vulnerable teachers are also not very tech savvy necessarily. And so we don't want to, they're not really up for learning how to Zoom into a classroom right now and do remote learning. But there is a whole group of teachers potentially who are college students who maybe didn't go back to school because their colleges aren't open right now and might have some extra time. So when we started talking to a bunch of teachers, they started, you could see the gears going in their head, and they started thinking about a lot of college students they might know who might be willing, for example, in one high school class we were thinking about on Friday, they could imagine if they taught the class for 15 minutes to both remote and in person, the college student could listen to the lecture, and then they would go into a Zoom breakout room and process what they all heard together with the kids who are remote, and talk about it with them, make sure that the kids who are remote understood it, go over the assignment, and kind of and go over it with them. And the teacher said that it would help them so much to know that those kids were getting some one-on-one attention. It would just release their anxiety a little bit to know that someone was kind of walking them through it. And then they could go into the breakout room, check how things were going, and they could even swap maybe. And so just that idea was really positive problem solving. So those are the kinds of things we're thinking about, because there are not qualified, certified teachers standing outside waiting to be hired for 2 months. We don't have full-time contracts teachers waiting to be standing outside because we have full-time contracts in our local budget that we can't fill. So we need to be creative. And we want to be creative. We want to use this money to help teachers and release their anxiety and support our students and give our kids the best experience possible. If we could get qualified, engaging young people who are excited about becoming teachers at COA and Maine and every single University of Maine school to Zoom in with these kids and keep them from feeling alone at home, we would do it. To that end, I'm meeting with Linda Fuller at COA tomorrow. She has some interns that are interested in working with us. Ms. Gabbianelli's been talking to University of Maine about students who would like to work with us. So we have relationships with universities and we're talking about working with them. And so we're ready to think outside of the box, but we need our community to help us think about that. We are willing to pay folks. We're willing to supervise them. Both Ms. Richards and I are able to supervise interns, so we don't want teachers to have to do that as well. We're not trying to create any more work for anybody, but we do really want to help teachers lower their stress, meet kids where they are, give kids as much support as we can, but we do need some positive problem solving, and we're ready to do it with this money, and we're excited to, but we have to get creative. And there's no more creative group of people than a bunch of teachers.
Rachel,
Jen.
you were mentioning students who maybe didn't go back this semester because of their schools, but maybe also students who did, but they're fully remote. I know University of Maine obviously is fully remote. Or even Ellsworth High School alumni that might be in an education program out of state. Because if we're doing Zoom,
Right.
and they might have 2 hours on a Tuesday available to them because of the way their schedules are all working.
It might be an option.
It might be an option, just, I mean, I guess that's
No,
the
that's a
silver
great
lining
idea.
to virtual, but it could be at any, even if you had a few people.
Actually, it is an option, and honestly, if you want to think about it, this has nothing to do with COVID, but Dan's looking for a math teacher at the high school.
So it
We
could be
we placed an
virtual?
ad for a long-term sub, and we're open to it being somebody who's zooming in. Because we
Well,
can't find
and it's funny
anybody.
you said
So
that
That
because-
ties into what you're saying.
Well, and it's funny you said that because one of the teachers actually did think of an alumni because the teachers already have relationships with them.
Right.
And the kids have actually taken their classes. So they know how their classes work and they know the rhythm of the classes and they really understand it. So that's exactly what that teacher thought. They said, oh, they know my Spanish class or they know, and so we're thinking about all those ideas. So a lot of you out there are parents and you have kids who might be interested. This could absolutely be a paying gig. So, I mean, we want to use this money to help teachers get through this because we know everybody is working hard. This is not money, this is not work that you're not doing anyway.
So, Dan, when you just mentioned something that obviously could eliminate some pressure, can that be with any position? Like you just said, the math teacher, could that person
We're
technically
looking
be
at that
virtual?
frankly because we don't have any other options.
So could that be across the board? Could an elementary art teacher be teaching?
It's
Virtually?
possible, when you're getting to the point where it's someone who's going to be a teacher, so we have a couple of those in the system right now at the high school because of a medical need, let's say.
Sure, but they were
We-
already our teachers.
But they're our teachers, but in order for them to zoom in from outside, we need to have another adult in the classroom.
Okay,
So
staff.
the CRF1 funds that we didn't hire substitutes, we hired temporary staff. That's the phrase
Right.
we have to use.
Right.
okay? That temporary staff member is in the classroom with the students who are there while the teacher's remoting in.
Gotcha.
So you're limited on teachers, but when we're talking about the examples that Rachel was giving, those are people that could zoom in who could work, and you wouldn't have to have a second person in the school.
Right.
So the answer is yes, but it becomes a little more challenging
might be a
finding
staff-
another person,
right.
but yes.
But so once you do have when you do have a teacher in the classroom, particularly in those hybrid models, if there is someone who's willing to watch the class with them and go into a breakout room and be with those kids and keep them engaged, like Dan was talking about, those kids are there, they're showing up, but they're just kind of like floating because no one's really like on them. I mean, we know middle school and high school kids, right? I mean, well, actually, all kids. They want someone paying attention to them. And if there was someone going, okay, kids, what do you guys think about that? What do you think of that lesson? What do you think that meant? Why do you think they said that? If someone was leading the discussion, facilitating the discussion, that's a way to go.
For sure.
So it might be a really good opportunity. And again, both Debbie Richards and I are willing to, you know, facilitate getting lessons from teachers and giving those to those students and heading up those opportunities for the students and the internships. We've both been in those roles ourselves. You know, I have teaching credentials and leadership credentials enough to lead those students, so we would be able to take that on as well.
So Rachel, as you're putting together the final pieces of the budget that has to be submitted, it's important for people to know that just because it has to be submitted day after tomorrow, we have one time to go back and, not redo the budget, but we can go back and
Revise it.
restructure it. So just because somebody doesn't reach out and contact whoever we're gonna ask them to contact
Right.
by tomorrow, doesn't mean people still can't do it. So
And-
I think it's a matter of getting the word out. So even if somebody called at the end of the week and said, I'm interested in doing this, just because the deadline for submitting this is Wednesday, Thursday, I'm not
Right.
even sure which day it is, Rachel. Wednesday.
But so what I did is when I met with teachers, what I asked them is I said, I'd like you to think about it. So we have an example in one of the elementary grades. One teacher, because of some kids who moved, has a very heavy maroon day and a lighter gray day. And another teacher has a very heavy gray day and a lighter maroon day, and they're in the same grade. And so the way they figured it is if they had one extra support person, they could share that person and have a much easier week, right? So I said, put in your budget for your grade, we need one additional person. And so in our budget, I'm able to take the grant amount for what that person would cost for the next 12 weeks and budget in for that grade level into the budget that we're submitting. We don't know who that person is. We're hoping we'll get that person. But without knowing who that person is, I'm still able to put it in the budget as a placeholder. And so I've said that across the board, K-12, and including adult ed, if you need another person. So for example, in adult ed, the person who is doing a lot of their secretarial work and administrative piece is working from home. And sometimes they need a person. And so they've asked to have someone be in place. And so we're going to put that in their budget. Right, and so just because they don't have a person hired yet, we'll put that as a placeholder. And so we're able to do that because I've asked them to give the 3 different categories of personnel, of supplies, and any equipment they need. And so we talked about all the different kinds of examples of what they could put in their budget when I went and met with each one of them last week.
What other things did you find were big ones other than staffing?
Additional technology, if they needed technology, as well as like online resources, so things that were already uploaded. Like there's something called Ed Puzzle, where you can take a video on YouTube or educational videos, and you can build questions, like it'll stop halfway through and it'll ask questions the kids have to fill out. And so you can have them not just watch a whole video and just wonder if they got it. It stops them and asks them questions in between, and you can assess actually how they're understanding the content. Things like that are already built. So they're finding things that are making things more interactive. So teachers are doing an amazing job of researching, finding wonderful new content, that kind of thing. Any other questions? I'm personally very gratified to know how much the community cares about the teachers and wants to hear from them. And so I do want to share with the community that, we are doing our very best to listen and try to get feedback from them and spend this money in a way that it can help them as much as possible, even though we know that they've taken on a really hard job and continue to do so out of the passion in their hearts. It's definitely a calling, as we know, and trying to help as much as we can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rachel.
Rachel.
Okay. Okay. J7, discussion and consideration of Hctc facilities study proposal.
I think this is exciting. This is something you've all heard about. This is the initiative by the Ellsworth Business Development Corporation. I think you've all had a chance to read the 2 documents that I sent to you. Or that were sent, okay. What you're being asked tonight is to support the Ellsworth the Hancock County Technical Center Feasibility Study Advisory Committee's recommendation to allow interim city manager Glenn Mosher enter into a contract with a successful vendor, which is Oak Point Associates, conditioned upon final fees not exceeding appropriated funding levels established by the city council. I don't think I need to read the document to you. I think you've got enough background on it. I think John Fitzpatrick, who's working with that committee, did an excellent job of laying it out. You've got a copy of the proposal in front of you.
I would recommend a motion to support the recommendation of the Hancock County Technical Center Feasibility Study Steering Committee to recommend to the Ellsworth City Council to permit interim city manager Glenn Mosher to enter into a contract with a successful vendor conditioned upon final fees not to exceed appropriated funding levels established by the city council.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
This has been a long time in the works, and.
It is, so it's time.
Yeah.
It's been about, I figured it's been about 4 years since the initial meeting with
Yeah.
Center of Innovation, Mickey Sumter, and, yeah, so, we're moving along, Amy.
And this should have happened 7 or 8 months ago. COVID
Right.
got in the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we were on track to bring this before the board,
Yeah.
probably around March or April.
Becky and John and I were to meet the Monday after COVID hit on Friday that weekend. And so we was put off for 6 months till we could get together again,
Well,
so.
technology being its thing and the need for trades and all of these things, I mean, it's all obviously a wonderful thing. And I spent a lot of time in that building because my father's office was in that building. So in the 70s and 80s, and when I go up and do different things in that building, I think to myself, it looks exactly the same. I could walk into,
Yeah.
walk into Mrs. High's office, which was my
Uh-huh.
dad's office, and think, wow, I know just how this was set up, because she has it decorated much nicer, but it's, it's so nice to see. It needs to go. Move along.
Okay, J8, consideration and approval of bids.
And I think we have co-chairs of the Facilities Transportation Committee, so I'll let Paul and Abby decide who's going to do this one.
Would you like to do it, Abby?
Sure. Consideration and approval of bids. Recommend a motion to approve the bid to purchase a stand-on scrubber for the ESD Maintenance Department as recommended by the Facilities and Transportation Committee.
Second.
Any discussion?
So we got,
Somebody second?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Abby did the motion, Rob did the second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, discussion.
Well, we had a couple of bids on the floor scrubber, and Chuck Turnbull recommended this one and had good reasons to do so. It came in,
It was the low bid from a vendor that he's very comfortable with, and it's a machine that they have had before.
yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Excellent. Chuck will be happy.
Mhm.
Okay. J9, discussion and consideration of proposal of Northeast Audubon to revive nature trails at EMS.
And thank you to board members for putting this on the agenda tonight. Rachel?
Hi, I bet you're not Lisa at me yet. 747-9. Okay, I just would like to say one other thing with the last thing, is that I was remiss in saying that this really has nothing to do with me. I just ended up writing all these grants. But seriously, it sounds like I'm handing out all this money. The principals and the administration have been caring so much about their teachers. I'm just the one who's like trying to like get out there and ask, but they've been working so hard. They care so much about their folks. They've been with me through all these meetings and sitting and trying to listen to them and bringing me through that we should be so grateful that we have such an amazing administrative staff. And I hope that all the families living out here know how lucky we are to have all these guys, because they've been sitting through way more of these meetings. This is my first one in 6 months, so I do hope that you all realize how lucky you are to have them in your children's buildings. I did not want to leave without saying that. Okay, so another thing we're very lucky about in our community is that the Down East Audubon is one of 7 chapters of Maine Audubon and covers most of Hancock County. And one of their objectives each year is to raise funds for educational programming and nature camps and scholarships, visits by Chewonki and Birdsacre staff, and overnight trips to Schoodic and part-time salary for Explore Outdoors educators. And because of COVID, they were not able to do all these activities. And so they have been trying to consider productive ways to use their funds. So they have a proposal that from a long time ago, in 2010, Brian Twitchell, Melanie Brown's son, our 7th grade teacher, our stalwart, wonderful 7th grade teacher, Brian Twitchell, assisted by other volunteers as an Eagle Scout project, built a nature trail near their softball field that went through the woods to Pond Avenue. And he also constructed a kiosk that stands at the entrance to the trail, and provided their support for the project from all of you and the EEMS administration and the Ellsworth School Board. And I want to thank April Clifford for catching this at the very end to get it on our agenda. The Down East Audubon Society proposes to revive the trail and add an outdoor classroom consisting of a gathering place with low benches where students can safely sit in a large circle. The Audubon Society will also provide interpretive signage at the existing kiosk and on the trail, subject to EEMS approval. The trail will be available to EEMS students when school's in session and the larger community at other times. They will fund and implement the trail work overseen by Peter Coleman, a professional trail builder with over 30 years of experience working for Acadia National Park. He may hire another trail builder to assist him and may engage volunteers. He would like to begin the work in November and continue through the fall and winter as weather permits, and the work would be completed in the spring of 2021. After walking the wooded area adjacent to the softball field several times, they believe that they have determined where the school boundary is located. You can see this, so I don't know if you can see this piece, if I can make it bigger, I don't know. This is looking from the river this way, and these are the 2 rods. This is the beginning of the property, and so this is where they would start here, and this is the start where the kiosk is. So after walking the wooded area, they found the 2 flagged rods that mark it, and those are noted on the project map. The trail runs along the edge of the woods, and the proposed outdoor classroom is adjacent to the trail in a semicircular area in a stand of primarily hardwood trees. And they will pay for the entire cost of the construction, which is going to be $16,500, which is pretty impressive and generous. And they may enlist other organizations to help in the future. They propose that a 3-person committee manage the project, 1 person representing and appointed by the DEA board, 1 person representing and appointed by the Ellsworth School Board, and Peter Coleman, project manager. The 3-person team will work closely to ensure communication among all parties and discuss details as the project moves forward. So they would like approval to start this project. And this is one of those silver linings of this experience, that they had this freed up money that continues something of the son of one of our teachers who works so hard in our district right now. And it was really fun when I was meeting with her for our CRF meeting, and I said, I've got a secret. I'm pretty excited to tell you this. And she was pretty excited to hear it. So to me, this seems like a pretty wonderful offer.
Absolutely.
Time for a motion?
And you can, and I know the extent pretty much of what I've shared with you. Mr. Higgins knows a little bit beyond that.
I recommend a motion to approve the proposal by Down East Audubon to revive the nature trails at EEMS pending confirmation of property boundaries and other considerations.
I second that.
Discussion?
Can I just add this? Would the seconder and the motion be willing to consider adding 2 people to work with Mr. Coleman. I think that probably someone who's administration at EMS should be part of this, but also I would think that Chuck Turnbull should be part of this, because he's responsible for the grounds.
In addition to the board member and.
Well, the board member is
Yeah.
supposed to appoint someone. You guys appoint someone.
Oh, okay. I thought
I'm
it said
suggesting
that
instead
he
of one
asked-
person, you do 2. Maybe one of the administrators at EMS. Rachel might be volunteering.
I'm willing to do it. Well, I don't, I
But also-
actually
But also
don't,
add Chuck Turnbull, because I
I
think we wanna
actually
have-
don't mind because I started the outdoor classroom curriculum, so I'd be willing to be one of them.
Great.
Unless somebody else wants to, I don't care.
But that's only if,
You want to add that to your motion?
Let's add that, let's let's add Chuck Turnbull and Rachel to the committee.
I got your wording, Abby. I got it.
Thank you.
And I second that.
Okay. We have to do 2 different votes?
No, it's all,
It's all one?
to approve the-
Okay.
To approve the proposed, proposal by Down East Audubon to revive the nature trails pending confirmation of property boundaries, and to appoint Rachel Coleman Ramos, Curriculum Director, and Chuck Turnbull, Facilities and Maintenance Director, to represent the board.
Okay,
Isn't that what you said, Abby?
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
I will closely confer with the principals to make sure it's within what they'd like to be happening at their
I think
school.
it's a no-brainer. I think this is
Okay.
outstanding.
Further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Marcosian, comments?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Public participation. I've got, first one that came in was from Kelly Casey. With regard to funds, why aren't we looking at the opportunities that are available for each grade level to receive IT additional teacher support, so our teachers who are teaching both in person and remote get some help? I think, maybe that question may have been answered to a large degree.
I think Rachel went through a lot of different options that are being
Yeah.
considered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that question came in earlier, before that.
Yep.
Can I just say that if she would like to talk to me personally about that, I'd be happy to answer. If she wants to email me, I'll be happy to call her.
Okay, so in case, that may not have been audible, but Rachel Corman Ramos just said if you want to have questions about that and you want to email her directly or call her directly, she can answer that question about funding opportunities. Krista Little-Siebold has a simple question. What does CRF stand for?
Coronavirus Relief Funds.
Right. And Kelly Casey again, in the future, would it be possible to read questions from community members after each agenda item to ensure public comments are addressed during the appropriate time? And then another question here from Kelly McKenney.
Yeah.
Can it please be explained why elementary level has remote-only teachers, but middle level does not?
You can go first and then I'll follow up.
The K-4 students are really reliant on their parents, and if you could try to envision being a kindergarten teacher and having students in person and then trying to teach those same students remotely, we felt that it was best based on pedagogy and child development to provide remote teachers for that. And in addition, that was able to happen with the staffing that we had. So it was really based on the development of the child, what was best for the child, and best educationally for them.
So in terms of the middle level, as we moved through the planning process this fall, we had number changes at last minute. We also, at the time when we were asking for volunteers for fully remote teachers, we thought that those teachers would be teaching across grade level, across content. We didn't have any interest in that. So as we moved forward with our planning, we made a plan to have students who were fully remote also be part of the program. We didn't have separate teachers who wanted to teach in that way when we were making the plans. The first week of school, we had students who changed to fully remote as well, and the week before that as well. So our numbers changed quite drastically in terms of some of that. But as we were making the plans through the planning process, it became apparent that we didn't have teachers that were interested in teaching fully remotely, or that wanted to teach across grade level at the time. That's what we thought we were going to need.
Because the interesting part with that age group is that there's math, science, history, and language arts. And so
Yeah.
you might only be a teacher of 2 of those
Yeah.
and not be a teacher of the other
Correct.
2. And so you're really teaching something out of your expertise.
And so the interesting part about that too, Jen, you bring up a good point, is that sometimes certification varies in the middle school. So some middle school teachers are certified 7 through 12, while others are certified K-8. But there are levels of comfortability when you talk about content areas that you teach and at that certain level. So again, when we were first starting this reopening plan, I was working with the advisory committee. That really wasn't an option. Since then, and since we've opened and recognized the challenges that come with having the hybrid in-person and the fully remote, we've tried to work with teams to find solutions. We've reached out to retired teachers to say, hey, would you be interested in teaching fully remote? They're not interested. We just recently reached out to probably 6 teachers when I was collaborating with the 6th grade team, and they reached out to 6 retired teachers. And they said, thank you for asking. We're flattered that you thought of us, but no thank you. And you understand that. So I think in terms of that, that's why I'm working with teachers and trying to find solutions that we can make sure that we're trying to offer the best that we can for teachers. We've offered extra support in terms of adult, and it's 1 adult to 5 teachers, but still every little bit helps here and there. We're trying to take some things off the plate of teachers, constantly looking at those things. So it has been challenging, and it is difficult. But we're trying to work through it the best that we can, and we are recognizing that a lot of students are wanting to come back at the end of the trimester, and we're working with that as well. So
It sounds
hopefully-
like when Rachel was talking about some of the things that, hiring students to help with a breakout session on a remote discussion about that, those types of things, if we can implement that,
Yeah.
that can help go a long way towards addressing the issues.
Yeah, and we're looking into those things as well too. Working with, like Rachel said, working with Maine. She has a meeting with Linda Fuller. So, those things unfortunately can't happen instantaneously or immediately, but it's something that we're working on with teachers and as we continue to get feedback.
Thank you.
Got one final comment from someone whose name came up in the discussion of the Audubon project. Melanie Brown, 7th grade teacher. My son and I are beyond happy to have his Eagle project revived. This is a dream to the second phase to his vision of the original project. Thank you.
Nice.
Well, it's nice to hear from Ms. Brown and know that she's stayed up to this hour to hear about the project. And I'm glad that we were able to approve that for her.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Meeting schedule. Ellsworth School Board Workshop Tuesday, October 27th, 2020 at 6 o'clock. Ellsworth School Board meeting Tuesday, November 10th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Item L, adjournment.
Having no further business, I move that we adjourn the board meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none? All those in favor?
And the
Thank you.
time?
9:58.
9:58.